Hey everyone, welcome to our working session. We're calling the working session to order at 6:01 p.m. January 14th, 2019. This working session is a special meeting of the council to discuss we have 5 specific items on the calendar, and see that there's several citizens from our community present tonight. We welcome you to our session. Just as a word of understanding, as a working session, citizen input is not taken. You are more than welcome to listen to everything that we say, but citizen comments and input is for tomorrow night for a city council meeting. At that point in time, any citizen can fill out a little piece of paper and pass it to us, and according to Texas state law, then individuals have 2 minutes to comment and give your input to the city council at that point in time. So tonight is an information working session for us, and if you have any, if what you have to say for tomorrow night, if you wish to do that, exceeds the 2 minutes, and you have something in writing that you want to pass to us, that's more than welcome as well. So if you want to put something in writing, pass it to the city secretary tomorrow night, that would be more than appropriate for giving input to council for us to consider other information. Okay, one item just for information that is not on the agenda, it's just kind of an update. I've been having some communication with Dr. Mark Smith, the superintendent of Duncanville ISD, and if you remember in the last city council meeting, his decision was that regardless of the outcome of the football game, that they believed that they wanted to have a parade. They have now changed that decision. He has been speaking with Coach Samples, and they do not wish to have a parade, and the city, the district is going to recognize the football team at the DISD trustee board meeting that's being held February 25th. So that pushes it way into February. Anything that we as a city do, and we wish to do something, we've always wanted to do something regardless of the outcome. I said that to city council. Protocol and as courtesy would be that they do something and then we do something subsequent to that. So Superintendent Smith and I are still in discussion about the possibility of a joint meeting for February the 25th. The city could honor the football team as well as the ISD honoring the football team. So that's all up in the air right now, but just wanted to let you know that the parade is off the table. That's not going to be happening. Okay. Where did it go? Okay. Okay, the first item on the agenda tonight is the solid waste contract options, pending expiration of the current contract with Public Waste Services in September of 2019. I have received several emails from our constituency, which I appreciate. To me, it's a very healthy demonstration of our citizens being concerned about our community. And I have responded to those that I've received, letting them know that I have received it. I've acknowledged the receipt of those emails, and it is our job as council to get those inputs and consider them as we proceed along the way on this. One of the things that the primary thing we want to do tonight is not necessarily work out the details in terms of what the contract is going to have in terms of its services. The primary focus of tonight's council is to decide for the staff, do we want to renegotiate the contract with the current contractor, or do we want to put it out for bid? That's key to the solicitation, or key to the process tonight, in terms of working out the details of cart, no cart, once a week, twice a week, brush pickup, no brush pickup, recycling, and how that's going to be done. Those details to be hammered out are going to be done at a later time. Tonight we need to plow through this and understand, is it necessary or desirous of council to do this as a rebid not a rebid, but as a solicitation, or do we want to negotiate with the current contractor? Mr. Hugman has informed me that the current contract was up for, had a 20-year term. We're not going to do that. That's just too long a period of time. You know, it's fair and prudent for us to look at some term much shorter than 20 years. And tonight we don't need to decide that either, unless you want to get into it and get some particulars on it and get some input. I'm going to open up to the council's input and opinions. Those of you that,
Sorry, you have a presentation.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And we do, well, I'll let Greg start. Go ahead and do the presentation, and we'll get into the discussion then.
Is this corner affecting y'all before I shut the door a little bit? Okay.
So,
All right.
introduce yourself, Greg.
Yeah. I'm sorry. sir?
Introduce yourself. We got a lot of.
Yes, I'm Greg Ramey. I'm the Public Works Director. And then just getting a few, I've got a copy for you, Mr. Mayor, coming off the, Jackie went to go get it off the printer real quick. So again, the purpose of tonight, for my part, was to brief council on the solid waste contract. So we'll talk about the timeline that we're looking at. Again, the current contract expires in September of this year. We'll talk about the current solid waste contract. We'll talk about service options so that we can get some feedback. I don't know why this keeps clicking. We'll talk about what you were alluding to earlier, then renegotiate with the existing contract or go out for bid, and then we'll get some more contract. So, all right, wow.
I think it may be on auto or something.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah, it was
Sorry, I was
different.
just, I'll have to just keep bouncing with me, bear with me. So again, for the timeline, what we're looking at is two different scenarios. One which would be where we do a sole source negotiation with the current contractor, and then one would be if we went out to bid. So the key highlights on here for the group was, if you notice, if we do the sole source negotiation, we could look at a May award, well in time for having everything in place for the September contract transition. If we do the bid process, going out to bid, getting the RFPs, waiting on the bids, we're looking at least a month of after that in terms of award, and then depending on who the chosen vendor is, you could be looking at up to 6 months of mobilization, as in the event that it's someone new to the city, we could be looking at them having to go buy equipment, hire all the folks. What we've been doing in our research is that these vendors that support, they don't just keep trucks in a yard waiting for their next job. When their job is over, they'll do what they'll liquidate, and then if they get a new job, then they go get more equipment. And so we do allow for a Republic, which might have to go month to month in the event that it is not them in a bid process. If we do sole source and then something happens and then we change and decide later to go to bid, then it sort of pushes everything out further to the right on the bid process. And then you'll notice as well, we're looking at doing some public outreach. I think as you look at the any of the options there, we do expect some level of change just by what kind of services people provide these days. And so we are anticipating some public outreach about two months before the new contract is started, so that we can just inform the public of any changes. And then again, you'll notice we put in some updates to city ordinance. That might be something that we see again, depending on the level of service and some of the impacts it may or may have on the public, or how we have the layout. So again, the current solid waste contract, this is, as the mayor said earlier, this is a 20-year contract. The last year, our current provider is Republic, but yeah, again, it's a 20-year contract, and we originally awarded it to Tosset Services, but just to show you the illustration of the market consolidation from basically a lots down to 3 main vendors, Republic was the one who, as they consolidated, inherited the contract. So y'all are familiar with the level of service today, but again, just the highlights. You know, again, we do pick up with the bags twice a week. The recycles are once a week with the bin. Bulk and brush is unlimited, and the city or the contractor only has a 14-day window to pick stuff up. And we do currently, and this would be in any contract that we have, would be the support the seniors and disabled. And right now, Republic supports 30 households with with like door-to-door pickup services to accommodate some of the seniors and disabled. There is a process to do that so that we truly ensure that the people who get that service are the ones that really need the service. And again, just to highlight the containers, again, it's the trash bags and the 18-gallon bins. And you'll see the Republic charges the city $11.27 per month per household. Now again, that is not what is on the utility bill, and a few slides later we'll show you sort of how you know, this part feeds into the overall utility bill or solid waste portion of the utility bill for pricing. And again, just to do a breakout for the alleys and curbside, you see almost 20% have alley, with the remainder having curbside. Why that's important, again, is later on when we look at the alley CIP and how that affects the rates. So I don't know if there's a way to freeze this. So the service options is a comparison. So let me just orient you to the slide in general. So across we have sort of how we want to treat garbage, some options regarding treatment of the trash, some options in terms of treatment of the recycling, and then bulk and brush. Very at the top in the yellow is our current level of service as of today, with the price of $11.27. So you'll see the 2-week unlimited bags, once per week in an 18-gallon bin, and then unlimited bulk and brush for $11.27 to Republic. And again, that's not what's on the bill. We did some coordination with Republic. Again, they gave us approximates because, again, this is procurement sensitive from them, and they don't want to, if it goes to bid, they want to make sure they're competitive. And so that's why you'll see down the right-hand side of the column, the price above the current rate that it would cost to do this work. So for example, if we were to go into 2019 with the exact level of service that we have today, we're looking at $6.
They've already provided that to us.
Correct.
So that if we were to renegotiate, we already know.
We know their approximates, and so if we decided to go to negotiating, then yes, we would say, what is exactly your price? How exactly did you get to that number, so that we would all feel comfortable that what we're getting is a fair and reasonable.
So we've already got a heads up.
And for them, they have a heads up. And we do have a slide where we talk about sort of the comparing and contrasting those two courses of action. I've ranked these sort of from what is most familiar to everybody to what I would consider with option 6 would be the biggest change to people. Again, the orange represents if we were to just continue everything as it is, plus $6 to the current rate. The green row, option number 3, reflected sort of some feedback that we received from council at the workshop, which was continuing the same treatment for the garbage, which was twice a week in garbage sacks, but going with a recycled cart, and then going to the reduced or the 4 cubic yard service for Vulcan brush. Now, what we have now, which is the unlimited, that is very, very uncommon these days. And just by frankly bringing out the special claw brush truck adds significant cost, and so is the 4 cubic yard max reflects sort of what a typical crew can accomplish using their typical equipment. That's why you'll see that as sort of the standard with options 2 through 6. Now, as you see from the little asterisk note there, if someone has a major project and they just need to be able to get that extra debris picked up, then the customer, the resident, would call the vendor. In this case, these are sort of Republic pricing, and work out their own pickup schedule, and there would be a fee of $75 to have someone come out and pick up that big pile of brush in lieu of the bundle. And I'll show you later on with some pictures about what does 4 cubic yards actually mean to me.
Greg, on option 5 on the recycling, it is still possible to use the bin if we go to twice a month versus basically what we're saying now is 4 times a month. We still could use a bin. If people needed more than one bin, they can always get another one, I guess, and not have to go to a cart.
Yes, I mean, it really boils down to like how much people recycle and what that is. And so, yeah, we would have to examine if people have more recycling than in one bin. And that's sort of the risk with that one is, to some extent, the few people who have larger recycling needs.
But if they have larger recycling needs, they can call the company and ask them directly what they would charge, what they do.
That's correct. It would be something that would be worked out at the individual level.
I know we've done that. So
The reason I asked that particular question is the inputs that I received about concerns over the carts. That is it possible for someone, if we were to go, with twice a month instead of once a week for recycling through a bin, the inputs I received are not really much in favor of carts in any respect, whether it be for garbage or for recycling. So that's why I asked if it's possible that if we go to twice a month, to still be able to use a bin rather than having to opt for a cart. So it's just something to think about.
There are a few things for consideration. So what you're looking at is really down here. If they don't want to, we're looking at a $2 difference in price. These are approximates between with the bins.
Got it.
This one would be once a week with the bin, and then this would be every other week with the bin, and there's a significant difference in those two options because it's more crews on the street, and really that's what the biggest factor in from the Republic's perspective. And again, that's who obviously we've been talking to, is it's all about crews on the street. The less times you got to put a crew on the street to drive a route, the better it is in terms of price.
Because I know in my neighborhood, I've got several neighbors that have 2 bins now. And so, and I know those are free. I mean, you go to the service center and ask for another bin, you get another bin. If one's broken or if you need to, they do that. So that's.
If you look at option 2 and option 3, option 2 is and 3 both assume the twice a week bag pickup. Option 2 assumes that you keep the recycling the way it is now with a once a week bin, and option 3 assumes you go to every other week with a cart. But you see the price is the same. So you could stay with the bins once a week, as we have right now, and in that you know, it's gonna be about the same as going to every other week with a card on recycling.
Got it, yeah.
So any questions? I mean, this will be in on your slides to reference later on, but do you have any questions about sort of the slide and how we sort of laid out the various options for you? And I'll
Now,
move on.
the dollars on the far right are not increments. It's only, for instance, option 5 would be an additional $3 versus doing the current.
Yes, sir. That's
right?
correct. So it would
So
be.
there's no add-ons as you go down the list.
Correct. It would be 1127 plus 6 or 1127 plus 3, 5 plus 4 plus 3, whatever. But yes, one price is the offset.
Okay.
Okay, so again, as I mentioned earlier, the bill that
Wait a
is.
minute, confused here
Oh,
then.
I'm sorry,
Then
ma'am.
how is it 1127 and the first one's the same as current, plus 6?
Because the
That-
new,
that's
reflecting the
their
new
rate
rates.
increase?
Yes,
Okay.
they, and again, it was a 20-year contract. And one of the risks on the contractor side is that not necessarily their pricing to actually perform the work keeps up with the actual market. There was an index that was used over the life of the 20 years, but at the end of the day, come 2019, the price that we're paying is well below
Right.
market, and you would not see this again. This is a loss for them.
So again, that $11.27 is what they're charging us, but we're not adding what we tack onto that price.
That's another slide. This is the amount that we pay Republic today. If we were to renew the contract, the same level of service that we pay $11.27 a day would jump to approximately $17.27. So it is the most, of these, it's the most expensive option for consideration purposes.
And if we took out the recycling, because some of us recycle our own, we do. We take our own recycling.
I don't think that would have any bearing unless we,
So the $6 doesn't matter that you're counting for recycling on it? Because I've been asked that question.
You mean doing away with recycling entirely? We hadn't really talked to them about that option. So
Well,
then
I
you're
would-
talking about just getting rid of everything through the waste stream.
Through recycling, yeah, the
But
recycling
I mean, so
part.
everything goes in trash pickup,
Well,
unless someone wanted to.
yeah,
take it
we
on
take
their
our
own.
own.
Yeah. We had not discussed that with them. We kept the recycling option in there.
Because that is something people could do themselves. I mean, it's not that hard.
I
really.
wouldn't.
Well,
I enjoy
bully
it.
for you.
No, I'm just saying, that,
You know, I'm saying,
having to been there.
if there, I
is
would
very
like to know the
convenient.
difference in the cost, is what I'm saying.
I understand.
If it was,
just drop recycling in general.
yeah. How much?
Where do you
Back to the
take your
line.
recycling? I know you can take it for tin cans, but where do you take it for paper and plastic?
We have places for all of that.
Glass.
And they, right down the street, they used to be, down Duncanville Road.
For all of
But they
that?
moved that one, so now we go to Grove Prairie.
Glass recycle, there's a big glass recycler in Lothian.
Really?
You know, but there again, it's
Yeah,
an
but how
individual
do you do
option
that?
to somebody to.
But you collect it for a while. I mean, I don't know, we don't put out massive amounts of glass and cans and things, but we have bags and save it, and then when we get enough, we don't want to walk around anymore.
You
we take it.
spend more gas trying to take it than you would today, keep it up here. You probably cost you more gas to go take it where you take it.
Well, we happen to live down, and the street is even with the top of our house.
Right.
So it's kind of a hassle carrying little bits and pieces up to the street all the time, instead of just accumulating it and going on one trip. So,
Okay. Well, we can look at the price of just de-scoping recycling in general from the contract. So again, the part that we pay to the solid waste collection contractor is the significantly largest part of the solid waste utility bill. But as I mentioned earlier, but it is not the only thing that impacts the overall statement that you would see at your, on your regular bill. So right now, these are the two pricings that we have. Again, curbside, we have approximately 8,000 curbside pickups, and they all pay $17.18. And then we have approximately 2,000 alley customers, and they pay $22.77. Now, what that again makes up is the blue is the solid waste, which is contracted. The landfill charges, which is also contracted, but we have a different contract for that.
That's a pass-through?
And those are pass-throughs. The yellow reflects the cost for the city's litter crew that works for the Parks Department and goes along the thoroughfares of the city. And then if you look over to the alleys, there's a $5.59 additional fee that they pay for the alley CIP program. And so what that pays for is every so many years as we accumulate enough funds, we're able to go back in and rebuild one of the alleys. And the logic is when this was set up is the main contributor to the degradation of the alleys is the garbage truck.
Who controls the landfill charges? Is that Republic or is that
It's waste management.
Waste Management?
Yes.
So is there a different price if Republic, does Republic have a landfill?
Republic does have landfills, but they've already looked at they can't match our pricing that we already have for that other contract.
Thank you.
Has Waste Management been contacted to see if they're going to change their price in the future?
Well, I mean, it's been fixed for the last so many.
She's gone.
Oh, there she is.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, we need to have that conversation with them.
Because it's been a long time since they've changed their rate.
It's
Yes,
been.
it has been. And it's a very favorable rate. And there is actually a scheduled meeting coming up soon for us to talk with them
Okay.
regarding that contract.
Does it go out, when's its limit?
Actually, that contract is year to year.
Year to year?
And that's just for the landfill?
Yes, ma'am.
And one thing we are looking at doing is re-examining the unit of measure for the landfill. So instead of going by cubic yards, going by tons, and seeing if that helps us. But again, we have a very, very competitive landfill contract right now. So as I mentioned before, the common thing nowadays is the 4 cubic yards for your pickups, and so what you're looking at is what does that mean? So the picture up here is not this. Everything that you see in the top picture is not 4 cubic yards, but it does represent things that would make it up. In reality, what you're looking at is something that would fit in the back of a pickup truck, roughly. It's about 4 washing machines, and really it boils down to maybe it's a love seat and some bags. Maybe it's a sofa with a few other, a nightstand. I mean, it sort of varies. Could be, 9 garbage sacks. That's really hard to judge, like, well, you have 9, but you can't do a sofa, but what you've got to be able to visualize with this 4 cubic yards as the residence is this, within or too big for what would Republic. And again, what we're looking at is a 2-man crew being able to actually do this work. And so that should also help you about, what could you and your spouse or a buddy be able to sort of load in the truck. Your pickup truck is about what you could expect Republic to load in the back of their vehicles. On the other side, again, with the brush, this is also, in order to avoid the big claw brush truck, it does require the residents to do what you see here, which is the bundling. And so you've got to chop it into manageable lengths, which is typically around 4 feet, and then you've got to be able to bundle it, because again, what you have to imagine is the most economical is that whatever a 2-man garbage crew can physically load into their vehicle, and that's why it's got to be, you know, sort of set up for a single person lift.
And I think that this is the thing that we need to be very aware of, and citizens do, because in talking to Robin at the trash company, she said that they have a lot of problems with contractors who live in Duncanville, and they will put their commercial stuff out on the street, and that's factored into it, and that's not really fair, because that's not what their residence is putting out. So I think if anybody knows of a contractor that's doing that, it would behoove you to, you know, if you want to talk to them first, and then say something to somebody, because it's not right.
Councilor Jamison, you're correct on the commercial bulk stuff. If the ordinance does not allow like building materials and things that look like it's come from a contractor, but it does not address and it does allow for brush and
Right.
tree trimming. And so I know that there's a lot of times people use commercial tree trimmers and they don't haul it off, they leave it there, and then we're all paying for that cost. So that is one of the concerns, and in going to a limited amount, then it helps reduce that overall cost, but puts then that cost of service on the people who use it, who have those large brush piles, and they're paying for that themselves. If you stay with the bag pickup, trash pickup, people can still get rid of a lot of bulky stuff that way. They can put bags of leaves and bags of grass out and it'll get picked up. If they're cleaning out their garage and they're throwing away stuff in boxes, in smaller boxes, it'll get picked up that way, just like it does now. So if you stay with the bags on trash pickup, people will be able to get rid of a lot of their bulkier stuff. The bulk 4 cubic yard, then that once a month pickup would come into place when it's a very large, like a sofa or a washer and dryer or something that's very large, then that needs to get picked up.
Doesn't the driver of the garbage truck, don't they orange tag garbage that's not, like say a contractor, they put something out in remodeling, or someone's running a business out in their home and they have extra garbage, don't they orange tag
They do.
that? So the city doesn't do that, they do that.
They do that.
Well, we've caught over in our district, Dallas, coming around onto our streets and putting out tree limbs. And I stopped and talked to one of them. It was the yard man for the house there on the corner with the big lions out front. And I just asked him, and he said no, that, you know, he took care of that land. And I said, so you're bringing it over here? And he said, oh yeah, Duncanville picks it up. So they know, and they know what they're doing. And that's what I'm saying. It behooves us to pay attention and turn them in, say something, because they do it.
Now, again, as we were talking about at the beginning, we're looking at sort of 2 major options, renegotiation with the current vendor, which again is Republic, or going out to bid. And so again, what I'm looking at is the left, we're just sort of contrasting between the 2 options. So under re-existing, again, we're getting a known vendor in the that's been here for many years.
Hold on, Nick. Is there any way to stop this thing from going auto?
Yeah.
Just time out. Let her fix this thing.
Okay.
It's pretty annoying. And it's hard for you.
Here, I'll get that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. So again, just going back, but I want to sort of just hit the highlights for you. Again, we're trading in a known vendor that's been in the community, or we can go out to bid, where we look at all the proposals and the lowest responsible bidder would win. Best value, again, is always the challenge. I mean, we try to go and make sure it's not purely just about the dollar, because what you don't want is to get the lowest price and then find out that it doesn't work out. And there's always a risk for that. I've done many contracts on the construction side, mainly not on the service side, where you do everything you can in terms of checking experience and the leaders and what they've done in the past, and sometimes you still have that challenge. And so that's really what we're dealing with there. But the price is the most competitive for the market. As we talked about for the timeline, if we choose to renegotiate the existing contract, we can start that immediately. If not, then we do have to start the bid process, preparing RFPs and putting it on the street, giving contractors time to prepare their bids, and then we would do the source selection. And renegotiating, one of the things with any kind of sole source is that it's incumbent upon the sole source vendor to disclose all their costs so that we can evaluate that it is fair and reasonable. With the competitive pricing, you would get, again, the market rate, but as I was alluded to previously, with the market consolidation that we have, where there's only 3 main players in the market, they all know each other and what to need to do, and so what we're talking about is what we anticipate is very, very tight pricing. Again,
Tight pricing means.
in terms of between the 3 is going to be very little difference between the 3 vendors. Then we talk about options. So as you saw here, we presented like 6 options. And they're fixed. If we renegotiate, we can have a little bit more flexibility on options. I mean, one example is right now we haven't gone on the street, so if we decide that we want to look at removing recycling as a service, we can, hey, let's talk about that option, or maybe there's something different. Or we can fine-tune pricing based on something we don't know yet.
We could have a pickup here. I mean, a deposit here somewhere, like we have
Oh, like just where people
you
just
bring
bring
by
by.
your
And
glass,
those are
or
things
bring by
that,
your plastic,
as
bring by your cardboard.
and those are things that we can look at under a negotiation but if we decide we want to go out to bid, we've got to be like, all right, these are the options, this is what we're going to bid, and that is in order, we're not being able to go back and forth in the middle of a bid process and keep changing stuff. So it's very finite. What we put on the RFP is, we're going to get one of those options.
You mentioned there were 3 major contractors. Do you know how they rate? Are they rated somehow? Whether it's 5-star, 4-star, or what it's rated for a service?
I do not. The 5 major ones are Waste Management, Community Waste Disposal, CWD, and then Republic. And
There's like Blue Bonnet, and there's another one that the mayor in Carrollton used to work for.
there's been a lot of consolidation.
ISI,
Yeah.
I think they got bought
They got
out.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of
But there's no rating.
consolidation.
I'm not aware of any ratings. I mean, I know that every municipality has one of those. I've seen cities with CWD, cities
Yeah.
with Waste Management, cities with Republic.
That's probably the 3 biggest ones.
And then with the renegotiation, we can anticipate reduced mobilization. They're already here, they already know the routes, already got the people, got the trucks. That would be the benefit there. with the bid. Again, it depends on who wins in their particular situation, but we do run the risk that the winning vendor will need time to ramp up their program to provide the services. And it can be up to a 6-month mobilization if they need to go out and get buy the equipment and hire more folks and do their own route tracking and stuff like that.
You said if you went out to bid, all the pricing was very similar. What are you basing that thought on?
When we were doing the market research and we were talking with the vendors, they were like, look, this is how it works. We're all together, and when we're competing across the Metroplex for work, this is mainly our conversations with our current vendor. Sometimes we're first, sometimes we're second. Sometimes we're first, sometimes we're second. We're rarely third, but that's sort of how they're competing. And so that when they're winning, things that make or break them is mileage and how far away is this particular city from a particular landfill. Those are the things that challenge, because that's one of the biggest geographic constraints. Is there's only a limited number of locations that we can take the waste, and we're paying. Those prices reflect those drives out to wherever our landfills are.
So
You've got my curiosity too on the 20-year contract. They offered that. Right?
Well,
Or
that was
did.
probably what put out. We probably
Or we said-
typically we're the ones that set
Right.
the terms, and it was a 20-year contract. And again, we worked it out back a long
Oh, I
time
know
ago.
the one that we
Tossed
have
it,
now,
and then
right. But I'm
and
talking
then they
about-
just sort of bought it out. But the original contract was 20 years.
Right, I
20-year
understand
contract.
that one. I'm talking about, they're saying now about a 20-year contract.
No, they would not do it.
Oh, they would
No.
not.
No, that's what I
I was gonna say, why wouldn't we want
I
to
mean, it may be,
lock in the
you know,
That's what I
price?
said at the outset, we are not.
Generally, you're
20-year
looking at
contract.
you're generally looking at a 7-year to 10-year contract with maybe 1 5-year renewal.
Yeah.
So at the most, you're looking at 15 years, but no, they would not do a long-term contract.
Okay, they wouldn't do
No.
it.
And I don't think we
Because I
would
thought-
want to do that either necessarily.
Well, you lock in a price is the only thing I was thinking, because that's kind of, we really held our prices down
Yes. We
by
were-
having a long
Well,
contract.
they get cost of living. There's clauses in the contract that allow them to go up.
Well, I know we've gotten a
Consumer
little
price
bit,
index,
not
yeah.
a
But
lot.
that hasn't kept up with their costs, because they use the consumer price index rather than one that's more geared towards the utilities that includes fuel, et cetera. So that's one of the reasons why.
They don't want to.
Yeah.
I know what we want to do.
can you share any, do we have any, do we track people calling in, constituents calling in about the service we're currently receiving from Republic Services?
I did inquire about that, but we really don't.
They do, Republic does, and I've gotten reports from them before and reviewed them periodically. Generally, we don't seem to have a lot of complaints that we hear about. Some do come up and we address them with them, and then, of course, they get complaints directly. Our coordinator at the service center gets complaints that they will address to Republic. But they do track the complaints, and they'll provide a report that shows all of the different complaints and what the resolutions were.
The emails that I've received are all very favorable.
Just
So
like
are mine.
Everybody likes Republic.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And I've been from the ones that I've got.
In fact, I even had people tell me that their person across the street is really sloppy and their bags go everywhere, and the guys are very good about picking it up. So,
I got that
That's-
same call.
yeah.
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 Oh, it's the same person.
That goes, there's one question I was asking.
My district?
It was, our constituency appears to be very favorable toward Republic.
Yes.
And some of these comments, those are the intangibles. Are there any other intangibles that we're aware of as a city that would be to our advantage to do a sole source renegotiation with Republic rather than rebidding it out?
Well, I can tell you that Republic has been a good partner with us as far as like at the property improvement project. We can tell you about that. Every time we've done that, which is twice a year, Republic provides bulk pickup, they provide dumpsters for us, roll-offs, and they've done that at no charge to us. Now, that's not to say that another vendor wouldn't do the same thing, but that they have been a good partner with us on those kinds of things. And with the recycling event that we have, they're there when we do the spring and the fall cleanup events for the community. They are there, and they partner with us on those as well.
And I know they're, I don't know Robin's title, with her, whatever, she's our point of contact, our regional director, whatever. She's very heavily involved in the Best Southwest Partnership, and Republic is a member of the Duncanville Chamber of Commerce, and I know she's very active in that as well. I'm just thinking those kinds of intangibles in terms of community interface that Republic has with us that you can't put a price on. And we would possibly lose that, but as Kevin said, somebody else might step up and do that just as well. But we have that relationship that is extremely strong right now in terms of their participation in our community. I was wondering if anybody else had any thoughts on those intangibles, because that thinking would go into, which side of the border we on here.
And I also received a lot of favorable feedback from constituents on Republic. Also, just want to spread that a little bit more. What have you guys heard from the other vendors that surround us locally as well, good, bad, or indifference?
Have you heard anything? I haven't personally heard anything from the other cities.
Have we reached out to just kind of ask those types of questions?
I know that Lancaster rebid their contract, I want to say it was 2 years ago. I believe they had Republic. They went with a different vendor, and they had some problems for about the first 3 or 4 months of operation until the new vendor got their feet on the ground. But since then, I've talked to the city manager, and she said that everything is going fine. But they did have a bumpy road at the beginning. I've not heard anything negative about Cedar Hill. I think they have CWD. So that's really all we know about it in the area.
So we're all three using different companies?
I think so. I think
Do any of them have garbage pickup by the bag, or have they all gone to the tins? Carts?
Cedar Hill, I think Cedar Hill, I know uses the carts, and I don't remember about Lancaster, but we gave you the spreadsheet at the retreat in November that had a number of the cities and the types of service they have. So if you still have that, it showed on it.
Yeah, with my recollection that Duncanville was the only one who did it by the bag still.
There are not a lot of cities that have the bag pickup anymore. We also, the city of Marshall just rebid their contract, and we got, Jackie got a copy of their staff report just today, and I was looking through it quickly, but they had a note in their staff report that they have Republic. They had an option to renew, and Republic chose not to renew because of the cost was not sufficient, and they had bag service. And basically, what they were told was that they could not get a vendor that would go with bag service, twice a week bag pickup, because of the cost. It was because of labor and workman's comp issues. So they rebid their contract. Republic got the bid, but they're going to carts, and they had two bids.
So you can't say that no one would do it. Everyone would do it
No.
at a cost.
They will do it at cost, and we have already had that discussion with Republic, and they will do bag pickup twice a week. But there is an increase in cost over what our current level is, but they will do it. Yes.
So we didn't see that cost up there.
Yes.
Yes,
That
yes,
was
that was
$6.
$6.
That was
It was $6.
for the current service, and then if you wanted to look at some changes, like in the bulk pickup, it would drop it down to about $4 increase. But that was one of the options, was continue the bag pickup twice a week. There you go. That was option.
Okay.
So the first 3 options on it, 1, 2, and 3.
So our current service is the most expensive future
Correct.
in encapsulating it.
Duncanville is a tree city. Property owners are out trimming their trees in the spring when they start growing. And I'm leery of this bundling to get brush picked up.
I see very few bundling.
Yeah.
They just dump it.
Yeah.
Well, they
it's
tell
hard for a
us
property
to,
owner to
when I live in
know.
the tree area, they tell us to,
Yeah.
that we have to cut it certain length. and-
I cut it, but I don't bundle it.
Yeah.
You're saying
Well, they don't really make you like tie it up, but
Yeah.
it has to be a certain
Yeah,
length
I
and
cut
stacked.
I cut all.
In fact, really, what we get, people ask us, can we have it? Yes, and we say, sure. And the same thing when we tore our deck out. I made an appointment with them to come pick it up, the old deck, all the boards at the top, and I had someone call me and say, do you mind if I take it? And I said, no, but let me call the trash company, tell them not, and he took it off. So, I mean, people will take your stuff,
Yeah.
you know.
So the reason I was asking that, Kevin, you mentioned the other city that said, Republic said no about their bags. Is that what you just said?
Well, I think it was not that they said no, they said it was gonna be an increase in cost. And so they said no to the contract renewal because they could not afford to do that service at whatever the contract renewal price was. And so, they said that it would be more board. And so the city, I guess, chose to bid it out. And I don't know if one of the options they bid was bag service, but it looked like what they ended up going with was card service.
And Greg, I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Or Kevin, don't they have different size carts? They don't, all of them aren't the 96 gallon ones, they do have different sizes.
You can go with a smaller cart,
Like a 65 gallon?
Yeah, I don't remember, yeah, something like 65. They do have a smaller cart.
Typically, what I think Robin was saying is the 65, because they're smaller, tend to be for folks that just don't have a lot of trash and don't want to deal with getting the bigger cart out to the curb.
So I think calls that I've gotten is they're more concerned that it's so big. But I was wondering, do they have smaller options, smaller carts?
I know a lot of cities, I've seen the smaller carts used for recycling. The big one
For the trash.
and then a smaller one for recycling.
From a process perspective, I gotta ask a question first. So what's our rough annual cost to Republic? What do we pay them on an annual basis? Roughly.
I can look that up here in just a second.
But here's, here's why I'm asking the question, just from a procurement policy perspective. For a multi-million-dollar contract, does the city have anything on the books in terms of procurement policy that says that a procurement threshold of X dollars must be solicited, or can it be renegotiated, or to the converse, that there is nothing that limits us or precludes us from renegotiating regardless of the potential dollar amount of the contract?
We had a preliminary discussion about that from a purchasing standpoint, and garbage is one thing that I believe there is a provision that you can renegotiate without going out for bid, and it's still lawful through procurement rules.
What Bob was saying is because it's considered a franchise.
So it could have a multi-million-dollar contract and still be permitted by our policies to do a sole source negotiation rather than going out for competitive solicitation.
Because of its.
Not so much our policies, but law.
It's state law.
Okay, well, I didn't know whether to say it's codified by law or whether it's a local procurement policy decision. That's what I was getting at too. For us as a council to put in perspective, looking at, the left side of that slide that you had there.
Oh, the renegotiate.
Renegotiation versus sole source, that we are free law-wise, statute-wise to renegotiate should we so desire. We're not precluded from doing that just because of the potential dollar value of the contract.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay.
We have discussed that with the city attorney, and he has told us we can't renegotiate.
Okay. I think it's important for us to intake and understand where we're going on this. Okay, thank you.
Any questions, council, regarding the renegotiation versus bid considerations? With that, I would just just go back to y'all for your guidance regarding the first one, renegotiating or going out for bid.
Do you have any additional input for us to intake before we talk about number one? Or you think you've given us everything we did? I guess I'll ask council, is there anything that you haven't heard yet that you want to know in terms of how we answer that first question?
I just want to ask this, so if we go through the renegotiation and we're still think there is better pricing, are we still able to put it back out the bid after renegotiation?
If the negotiation breaks down, failure to come to an agreement, then yes, we would put it out for bid. The risk is that, if it took 90 days, to do that, and then we sort of, we're going to have them going month to month on the back end, because then we would have to go and term and put it on the street to get it, to get the bids.
I just want to open it up just in case.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
All right, thank you.
I want to go back to one point you made, Greg, in terms of going with somebody besides Republic. There would be some ramp-up time for that new contractor, which then puts us in a month-to-month contract with Republic.
At that plus $6.
And I would presume it would be more than the $6. I mean, for a month-to-month contract, it would be a premium. I would
Charge anything.
Well, yeah, if we were not gonna take them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't, to me, I'm just thinking it wouldn't be the 1727 go month to month. It's gonna be something drastically more than that as a premium because they know they're out.
Right.
And it's just normal business. It's not negative, it's just this is the way business is. We lost the contract, we're going month by month. Here's what you're gonna pay City of Duncanville on a month-to-month premium basis. I think that also needs to come into our thought process in terms of the effect of sole source versus renegotiation. Those are the same thing, sole source versus solicitation.
And I'm fine with renegotiating with Republic. I would like to know if there was, if they've done it anywhere else, or if there's something that we could do like on the recycling. If it would make, because it's not taken out, so you don't know how much difference it makes. If it doesn't make any difference, then, or not much difference, but if it made a difference, for instance, there was a place that we could just drop it off here locally, I guess they'd still have to pick it up, but
But they don't have to run the route.
they don't have to run the route, right? Like we could just drop our
Do you have
glass.
an idea of how many people in the city, percentage-wise, does recycle?
Yeah,
Has that ever been?
that would be a nice thing to do.
Because I know on our block it's about a third.
We talked about it.
We did, she has the numbers, and I don't remember it off the top of my head.
It
It
could
is
be
not
that-
as high as we would like it to be.
So, yeah,
Leslie, I didn't figure your question.
Robert,
a percentage of people that do recycle. Because on my block, it seems to be about a third at the most. And so I'm thinking, I mean, that's just a little snapshot, but I'm thinking it could be that we're paying for recycling that's not getting done. And I recycle. I mean, I have more in the recycle than I do in the trash, sometimes 2 or 3 times as much. I load everything, I wash everything, I put it all in there. But me and another person on the block seem to be the only 2 people that do part of that OCD about it.
Our block is the converse. On Thursdays, our block is replete with bins out there for recycling.
So y'all do it over. I'd just be curious about that. I hate for people to pay for something that the city's not using. And if there's a place to take it in the city, like a drop-off, and those people, like me, I'll do it. I mean,
That's a good question.
That's what I do, but.
Where could we
Service center.
plan
Service center.
them out at the service center?
Well, they would know,
Drop-offs.
Republic would know.
Yeah, we would have to, that would be something we would have to fully vet out. The thing that I would, I don't know how it impacts pricing, but
That's what we need to know.
my concern would be, the whole idea of the recycling is predicated, as Leslie said, with some level of care in the recycling. And so we would have to be set up in this, that where it'd be monitored to some level. Otherwise, it ruins everything. That's the biggest problem, is if any contaminate, the market in recycling, as we were told, is very tight. And so their requirements on the quality of the recyclables that they get is very significant.
So if you have to take it to a place, then you're gonna get a person that's really gonna care about it, taking care of their recycling, they're gonna clean it up. If you're just putting things in a bin, then you're not gonna wash out ketchup bottles, you're not gonna, you know.
It could be something that we don't want
Yeah.
as well. I mean, it could be turned into a garbage,
Yep.
No
or
matter what.
construction waste, or.
And no matter what on recycling, we know we need to do more education to the public on cleaning things out, what can and can't be recycled. Because a lot of times people think they can recycle something and it can't be. And it's just because they're not sure. And so we know we need to do more education. One of the things that, though, if we did away with the recycling, we can talk to them about that as an option and compare those costs. I do think we would see an increase in what's going to the waste stream, though. And now, if that can be quantified, that may end up, though, changing our tonnage to our landfill, and that may increase some costs there. So, and there may be some ripple effect that we don't really know. And I don't know if we can quantify that, but we can work at that, and certainly we can ask and discuss that as an option.
If the money
cost benefit.
isn't a big difference.
No, the recycling market is pretty much tanked a lot.
Yeah, because the Chinese quit buying it
Yeah.
from us.
Yeah.
Chinese quit. We used to ship everything
Right.
to China.
Well, are we as a council ready to take a poll in terms of giving the staff guidance on whether to resolicitation or I'm sorry, renegotiation versus solicitation?
I'm all for the bidding process. I'm all out, you know, getting the best price, the best deal. And I know what Republic has brought to us. But we don't know what the other ones can bring to us. And because our neighboring cities have different ones, then, you know, there's viable options out there. So I'm all for the bidding process.
There's one problem with that. I know I've seen waste management at the TML conventions. They don't do twice a week pickup with bags. They do plastic bins. So you gotta have, if you're gonna put a bid out, it's gotta be for the same thing. It can't be for apples and oranges.
Well, I think most of us, I hadn't heard anything contrary yet. The calls and emails we've been getting is we want to keep the bags, and everyone seems to like Republic.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with Leslie. I'm a person, I think we ought to bid our stuff, but in this case, I'm kind of in favor of just renegotiating the contract.
Okay. Yeah,
Renegotiate.
Mark?
Yeah, renegotiate.
Renegotiate.
Patrick?
Renegotiate.
Renegotiate myself, so there's your guidance. That help?
Well, for that, yes, sir. Did we want to go and look at the larger, that spreadsheet again, or?
You know, what I, just
Fine.
again, but, you know, based on the inputs, I think we as council members have received a lot of input from our community, which is very, very healthy, and I really appreciate it. I would prefer, in fact, I've requested some people that have inputted me, you know, please come tomorrow night and, you know, fill out a slip and talk to us tomorrow and give us their comments. I'd really like to hear more from the community on their preferences before we start outlining that, if that would be agreeable to the council.
I can tell by their faces, they're looking forward to coming again tomorrow night, and filling out a form and standing in front of them saying something. I got about 21 phone calls, so I heard them.
I got all emails, I didn't get any phone calls.
I got
I got emails also.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ranch room right now.
So it would be okay if we defer scoping out the options until we get more from our community tomorrow?
I think we got the
I think we
options.
got, and I think we heard from them.
They went back, they went
I
twice a
think
week.
I think we, based on what we're hearing from you today, I think we're down probably 3, with current level being probably your preferred. So that gives us enough, I believe, to work with Republic. And as Greg said, we've already been having discussions with them and talking about a lot of different options, but I think based on what we're hearing today, we have a very narrow group that you would like to, that you would consider. So I think we have enough, and certainly as after tomorrow night, if you have more clarification for us tomorrow, that will help too. So.
Yeah, okay.
So am I hearing you saying they will also give us, you're saying Republic Services will also perhaps give us an opportunity to look at another way of doing it as well?
I'm sorry.
They will look at this as well and give us some more options. If that's the case, we'll just do the same.
We may take recycling out. I mean, it's.
Yeah, and we'll talk with them about just eliminating the recycling. We'll talk with them, it sounds like the preferred option is keep the current level of service, so what is that gonna cost? And then perhaps the next biggest impact you can make on the pricing is to reduce that bulk down to 4 cubic yards. That, again, that's.
And for the constituents that told me they're like bins, I like us to see it both ways. I like for us to go ahead and give us the pricing for the bins as well.
You mean
Just
the
for us-
carts?
The carts as well, just for us to look at it.
For
Because-
trash pickup
Trash
or
pickup.
just for recycling?
Was trash pickup.
It's on here.
It was up there.
Or no, when they outlined to come back to
But the
us
rest
on
of the group
pricing.
said that we wanted to stay with the way it was.
Right, but I mean, if we're looking at it, we're taking both everybody's feedback, you're gonna be able to show everybody apples to apples as well.
But
Well, we have-
Patrick had a good point, talking about, I'm sorry, is the possibility of a smaller cart. for
Yeah,
trash.
I mean, I just
That's
heard
not-
that, I was just trying to get clarity from
Yeah.
Kevin or Greg, because I know the 96 gallon is the one that I guess for me is probably, chest high.
About as big as you.
Yeah, so that, yeah, she couldn't do it, she couldn't do it. So that's why I'm saying if there was some,
My neighborhood.
if there were people, I mean, if there were another option other than the 96 and then different levels, I mean, and again, that may be determined by what kind of, my house maybe produces more trash than her house, or her house, was less than, whatever the case might be.
I mean, we had some discussion with, because they brought up that there is an option for that, and it's usually requested by exception.
Okay.
But the cost is in the driving through the town, picking up the trash regardless of it. I
Right.
mean, the bin definitely facilitates it, but I don't think we would see much impact on the pricing as much as just being an option to, like, it would almost be like a quality of life
Right.
determination, like, I want the lighter one because it's easier for me to manipulate.
And if we go with something, it's citywide. Can't have, so, see, in my district, bins don't work.
Well, the carts don't.
I mean, the carts
Yeah,
don't, they do
because,
not.
Yeah, the driveways are too steep.
No, and you look at Fair Meadows. I'd like to see somebody have carts and come down the street with all the cars. Try it.
Yeah, and those homes, they, like 8% of them have garages converted, so they don't have anywhere to put their cart when they're done.
We would,
That's behind their house or this.
one of the things we were talking about with, as you saw in the timeline, like, potential ordinance, so yes, if depending upon what, the end of the contract, we would, we can anticipate some ordinance changes to adapt to that. One would be if we have to go to a lesser brush, but furthermore, how do we would have to change our guidelines. Right now we say, put out your garbage sacks at 7 o'clock in the morning, the day of. But how, we might change the rule, we have to change the rule on if we have a cart. And then we would have to change the rule and come to y'all and what do you want us to do with the cart? Is on the side good enough? I want to see it, what do y'all want to do? So, that would be something that you would anticipate. With any of the courses of action, barring, of course, just a complete continuation of existing service, we would be coming back and you could anticipate seeing some level of ordinance updates.
Okay. Great, thank you. We can take a 10-minute break if y'all wish. Y'all want a 10-minute break? And maybe our citizens probably heard everything they wanted they came for tonight too as well. All right, we'll take a 10-minute break, 7:20. Please be back in your seats. It is 7:23. We are back in session. Item number 2B on the agenda, possible amendments to the city charter, including city council length of terms, term limits, and other potential amendments. Mr. Hovey.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So at your retreat in November, had discussion about a possible charter election. We had some discussion about, what that might look like. It sounded like from the council at the time that there were only two things you were really talking about or focusing on, and that was length of terms and term limits. But we really need to make a decision tonight or get direction from you as to what you want to do if you want to proceed with a charter election. So really the first question is should we hold a charter election? And then if you want to make changes, are you looking at a very narrow scope, i.e. term limits, length of terms? Do you want to look at broader changes to the charter? Because that can then impact on whether how much time it takes and whether you want to do a committee or not a committee. And then lastly, do you wish to call a charter election? So let me kind of get into.
Wasn't there something that staff was requesting for?
There
the
was,
charter?
and I'll
Okay.
mention that. There's just one little change there. So the timeline and why this is critical, why we're kind of in a critical time period now, crunch, is that if we, for a May 4th election, council is going to have to call the election on February 5th anyway. That's when you call the election for the normal election. But that is when we will also have to decide whether you want to call for a charter election. And so that is essentially your next city council meeting. The ballot language has to be submitted to Dallas County during the week of February 21st to the 25th, which means that by February 19th, you really need to make then the decision on what that language is going to be that you want for the voters to consider in a charter amendment, charter election. So that's why we're kind of in a time critical period, depending on what you want, which direction you want to go. So during the November retreat, as I said, you kind of focused on two areas, and that was the length of terms and term limits. If those are the only things you want to do, then what I need is some direction from you as to what you want, and we can put the city attorney on it to bring you back some language that you can consider to put on the ballot. So if we start with the length of terms, currently, as you know, your length of terms are 2 years. What you kind of discussed was the possibility of 3-year terms. Of course, that then changes your elections. Right now, as you know, in the odd years are places 1, 3, 5 in the at-large, and in the even years is places 2 and 4 in the mayor. If you go to 3-year terms, and that changes, that time period. And so there are different options in how you can look at what places are up for election each year. And these are some different ones that we've seen, and talking with Bob Hager, these are some different ones he has seen as well. So an option would be a 3-3-1. So 3 places are elected in each of years 1 and year 2, and then perhaps the mayor is elected in the 3rd year, so you just have that one place. A 2-2-3 option is that you have 2 places elected in each of years 1 and 2, and then 3 places are elected in the 3rd year. There is a city that has a 3-4-0, where essentially it's the same as what you have now, with 3 places elected in 1 year, 4 places elected in the other year. The 3rd year, there would be no election. Bob represents a city like that. He said in reality they've been having an election anyway for other reasons. So, it sounds great, but you may have other things that come up that you may feel that you need to have an election on anyway. But those are some options. If you look at term limits, then there too, it's up to the council on what you want to do. Typically, or kind of what I've seen in the past, is for 2-year terms, keeping the terms that you have now, but just going with term limits is like, generally there's 3 consecutive full terms in one place and maybe 10 years total. And that would be like if you're a district council member, you could serve 3 full terms, but then you run for that at large or the mayor, then you could serve a total of 10 years without having to step out for 1 year. 3-year terms, you could be, again, looking at 2 consecutive full terms. That would be 6 years. And both of these assume that if you're elected midterm, filling an unexpired term, that does not count towards the term limits. Although you can, if you want to make a maximum total, then that could be part of it. But generally, it's looked at for the full terms. So those are kind of the 2 things that you talk about. And as Councilmember Thomas mentioned, from the staff perspective, the one thing that we would ask if we do a charter election, currently in the charter, it requires that the budget be submitted by the city manager prior to August 1st, which means July 31st is our deadline. We don't get the full, the final tax roll until generally that week. And so it makes it really tight on us as far as getting that final tax roll and finalizing our budget before filing it. We usually have a pretty good idea. We're pretty close on it, so it's not been a problem yet. But most places, generally, what we would recommend though is if we move that deadline to August 10th, that gives us a little more breathing room. So that's the only thing that we would recommend. So with that, I'm kind of looking for discussion and direction. And again, if you want to do a charter,
If we're making charter changes, I think there'd be a whole lot more charter changes. Normally, what the charter says is that if the people want to change it, they get a petition and come to the council with it. But there's a lot of things, and I'm getting input from people. Some people want to go back to the mayor not voting, doing away with at large, or having a 6th district. And also, I've had some call and say that we ought to make it in our charter that if your taxes aren't paid, you can't run. So I think that there are a lot of, if that's what we want to open, but normally it's not the council that instigates charter changes.
Did you get in that from where?
I'm sorry, Mark.
She's getting that from, I'm asking where she's defining that information. Is that from the charter per se, or is that?
What are you talking about?
You're saying normally it's not the council's making that decision, it's the constituents that will say they want it.
It's the citizens, yeah. That
So I'm asking
normally-
you, where are you getting that thought from?
Look at the history of it. And also, National League of Cities has an article on it, and it says, when you talk about limiting terms, it says that really you're taking away from the people the decision by limiting terms in the charter, that they want to have that they should have the right to determine.
Well, during the retreat, this was just a discussion of,
Right.
you know, like a what if should we?
Right.
So tonight, if the first 2 aren't even,
I think every election is a term limitation.
Me too.
I mean, get out there, you work it, and you can limit the term. But as far as the 3-year, I think that would be nice, because as soon as you stopped campaigning, then you have to start thinking about campaigning again. So I think a 3-year term would be nice.
And I'm for the 3 years, but I'm also for term. I think it gives the city an opportunity to have a fresh voice around the table as well, even if
They never had it.
I mean, even
Kind of
if,
lack of fresh voices.
well, they would.
No,
They
we've never
would.
had a
And
lack
then
of
if you
fresh
think about comparing,
They kind of showed up tonight.
who else we have around the city as well. There's all of our sister or partner cities has the same thing on terms.
That doesn't have anything to do.
And I don't see why it would hurt us to not have that as well, especially with, I mean, we're not saying that the tenure council members will cycle off that quick, but I'm just saying, no, I'm just saying, you would have to make it where it does not, you'd have to grandfather people in that's already there, it's been there more than that.
Yeah,
that max.
it would start.
when somebody chooses not to run.
Right. Then it
That
goes to the,
particular
then it goes to
seat
the
becomes
recycle.
vacant by choice, not by charter.
Right.
Well, Cedar Hill can't have term limits because
No, they don't, so that's not
Ron Franklin's been
true.
mayor for
Now,
21 years.
The solar has it.
So what? Cedar Hill doesn't.
Well, that's why I thought, that's why I
Yeah,
thought.
but you said most of the cities around here, and they don't.
Okay, you have the solar, you have Dallas. I had checked with Glen Heights, but I think Glen Heights has it. You probably have more that have it, more that does not have it.
I think you look at your city that you're in, what,
Yeah, that's why it's convenient for us to do.
Well, what about the first one? Do we wanna think about 3-year terms?
I would, I think my 3-year term. To let this point, once you start getting in, start moving around, it's, you start over.
So, it seems like in the past, what triggered one of these was state laws constantly interfering with our charter. And we would have to have a charter amendment or a charter election, mostly to correct the charter so it matched state law.
Mhm.
And then when we did, like when we did we went from at-large to single-member districts, I had just started to work here. I think there was a
so
chart.
how long ago was that?
That was a long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
1984. But we had a city charter committee that recommended changes, kind of like we did the bond committee this past year.
I don't remember any committee making, I know citizens did, that they would bring a petition forward to the council.
Yeah. Well, the biggest change was, at-large to single-member.
And that was a lawsuit, yeah,
Yeah.
that was a lawsuit. Because all of the council people were coming from District 1.
It's the best district.
Well, which brings me to why they said they don't want at-large and the mayor to vote, because we're back to 3 members from 1, and we continue to have 3 members from 1.
Well, back then, I think everybody lived in about a 2-block
I
area.
know, I remember, and the city, the school board all lived,
Yeah, everybody was.
everybody was right there. Now they're just all on the Rotary.
So it
The Lions
looks like the
Club.
last time the charter was amended was
2003?
2005. May of 2005. Prior to that, there was an election in 2002 and 1997, the last 3.
How do y'all feel about 3-year terms?
I support 3 years.
I support it, but I don't know that if that's the only item that we need to.
Well, let's just do one at a time.
Okay.
Don?
I would support a 3-year term.
Patrick?
Yes.
And Johnette?
I feel like Dennis, I would support it, but I wouldn't do a charter amendment for that. And I think you have to be careful when you open charters, because other things can be done at the same time.
Mark?
I support,
Yeah, I'd support a 3-year term too. But should we? How does it work? I mean, we open it up to the city, to the constituents and say that the city is looking at changing the charter, what else?
But
do
that's
you
not
wanna
really
change?
the city, it's,
but they'll get a
Well, I mean,
chance
the
to
people-
vote, so they
when I
will
say
be
the
the-
city, I mean the people. of
I
the
know what
city.
you're saying,
So I'm-
but that's why you have to be careful with it, because really and truthfully, that sounds sort of self-serving.
I mean, it's the council has that authority. And what I've seen it for is petitions from cities. I've seen I've seen a council too where there's been a very limited change that they wanted, that the council went ahead and acted as the charter review committee. But generally when you're looking at more things, or you want to look at a charter, you have a committee that does solicit citizen input and has town hall meetings, takes that input, makes recommendations for the council, and it's the council that ultimately decides whether they want to take it to the charter election, or whether they want to take the recommendations of of the committee or change those. But that's a very time-consuming process, and that's not something you would get done here in the next couple of weeks. So really, you know, it's.
So, looking at this from a very pragmatic view, we just need to get number 3 done. And forget about 1 and 2.
Well, oh, you mean on the budget?
Yeah.
No, I mean, that, I wouldn't even say that that's that important either. I mean, we're living with it now, it's not a problem. It was just, if you're gonna do a charter election, that would be one thing we would ask that you include in there.
Oh,
But I wouldn't say that that has to
During
be.
the retreat, it was kind of like, would you please do this?
No, no.
Yeah,
We could
Richard
live
was
with
on
it.
his right knee
Richard
asking us.
Well, Richard, yeah, well. Richard's
But-
got it down now.
So-
We got the new software, so he's gonna be fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right, well then let's just close this then.
So we're close, so everybody's open up, we're closing it down for no election.
So we're not gonna revisit this until y'all bring it up again.
I think
The
so.
timeline's too short anyway.
Yeah.
You know, to do it with a committee and do it the right way, and there's no time to do it the right way. Okay, go, good. All right. Item 2C. Possible general homestead exemption for ad valorem property taxes.
We could do a 20-year contract. God, I thought, why don't we do a 20-year? Because they don't want it.
Okay, so wanted to reiterate before we get into.
Let me interrupt for just
Okay.
a sec to preface what you're gonna say. As a newcomer to the process, in the political process, I've heard a lot of discussion about the general exemption, homestead exemption, and I had to do a lot of research individually and get educated on it in terms of what it would do and how it would impact things, and I've gotten fairly well educated on it. But at the same time, I was very concerned about what's happening in Austin. And what I did was I sought for advice from our senior legislators that are representing us in the city of Duncanville. I had a personal discussion with Senator West, and I had a personal discussion with Representative Davis. And I asked for their insight, I asked for their input, I asked for their advice, and I said that we have, you know, this idea of doing a general homestead exemption on our agenda. We know that there will be a dollar impact in terms of where that's going to fall out. And there are 2 major items on the legislative agenda this session. It's schools and it's property tax. And the revenue cap is going to be a heavy, hard push by our governor. And nobody really knows how big his coalition is in terms of whether it's going to go or not go. So I asked Senator West and Representative Davis, I said, help me out. What do you think we as a city ought to do, knowing that these things, they're not just on the horizon, I mean, they're on the table. This is now and today. Both of them said to me, their personal advice to me was that it is an unknown factor what's going to happen in the legislature. Something is going to happen. To what extent, they don't know. But they felt they were in agreement that it would be prudent for we as a council to not do anything at this moment because we don't know what's going to be happening in the city in the state legislature.
And that has been what they've been saying for the last 6 years.
Exactly.
I agree.
That wasn't,
Ah,
I thought you were
And-
gonna say
and-
something totally.
yeah.
That's what they said. Okay.
And TML has this article that says Governor links school finance reform to property tax reform. So it looks like to me that they're going towards the school, getting that reined in, because they're the beast.
They are. Incredible.
Hopefully,
Incredible.
but anyway, I got just almost as many calls about the cards as I did about the homestead. So, I'm excited about getting homesteads.
Me too. And,
And I understand their point of view, I understand your point of view, I understand, you don't know what you don't know. But I've been visiting this homestead for, I think 8 years, and it's always been the same thing. They're gonna do something, and they have been talking about doing things. They have been, but they haven't done anything. So, I mean, how do we function? We, do we never give our people a break?
And that's
Because
not right.
the state is not, they're not dependable? I mean, that's something, that's a political decision. That's something we're gonna have to, each have to make our own political choice.
yeah, because you could say the same thing and say, how can we buy new vehicles for $500,000 every 2 years? How could we go through the whole budget on things? How can we do this? Because he may lock in the amount that you can increase your taxes. That could be on everything.
So
It wa-
educate me on something. You have historical perspective I don't have. Has the political environment in the past been as charged with emotion as it is at this moment?
Are you talking about
Oh,
nationally?
Oh,
No,
more.
no, I'm talking in Austin.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think more,
I was gonna say actually.
4 years ago, yes, more. I think it's kind of, it does, and we're not in the areas where they're trying to address the problem. That's our problem. We're gonna get negatively impacted because they're trying to fix problems in
Somewhere
other
else.
cities.
Yeah.
Because other cities, they can't do it at a local level, so they're going down to Austin to make them do what they want. What they should do is elect their mayor and their council people that represent their points of view and do it that way. Well, they can't really, because the people at that local level know they have to build roads. They have to put in infrastructure. They're growing exponentially. They have to do certain infrastructure projects. So that's where the rubber meets the road. It's a complex problem, but we're just getting caught up in.
But there's
in that
also bad
vortex.
decisions.
Yeah, well, there's always bad.
Eon. Did I say Eon?
But I'm not, I'm.
Yeah, but that's money.
But I'm saying, and when I go down to Austin, and I'll tell them this, we run a tight ship compared to these other cities. We run a very tight ship. I mean, we were debt free. We paid off our bonds. And now we got more bonds, but we're using the same money that we did for the other ones. And it had, you can argue that it had a zero impact on our public, which is not what other cities are seeing. Other cities are seeing people wasting their money. They're seeing deferred maintenance. They're seeing, well, that's on that one end, and on the other end, they're seeing exponential growth. And they, you can't drive through Frisco or Flower Mound without getting in a jam because they just don't have the infrastructure.
But they choose to spend their money differently.
But that is a local problem.
Yes.
And that needs to be handled locally.
Right.
And so not all cities are created equal.
And I think we need to also recognize the fact that we're hearing this from people that have elected us, not to address it. They didn't elect, with all respect, they didn't elect Senator West, and they didn't elect Representative Giddings. They didn't elect Davis. They didn't elect them to address what's going on in Duncanville.
And I respect
Yeah.
Representative Davis and Senator Royce West. They're in the game, they're for us. And they're just like, they don't know what's going on. I mean, really, they don't know. It's Wild West down there. It's like 3 months, bam, 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 watch it on video. They don't, no one can anticipate what's gonna go on down there. And if you're always living in fear of what's gonna happen in the Texas legislature, you're never gonna get anything done.
No. And,
So-
I mean, even.
Well, I'm not living in fear. I was trying to,
I mean,
I
yeah,
felt was
you're trying to
exercising due
plan.
diligence on my part.
Yeah, you're trying to plan.
Yeah.
But you can't plan because they may throw a wrench in your works. But you know, that's always a possibility.
Yeah, I just keep hearing that this 2.5% to 4% could be very, very real.
And they have been saying that for years.
And, you know,
It-
Richard has run the
it
numbers.
is.
At 2.5, we could be looking at a $1 million impact. At 4%, we could be looking at, you know,
It hasn't
$750
passed
million
yet.
impact. I know. and
They've
this-
been talking about doing away with red light cameras for years, and there was a lot, the cities are doing away with it themselves, but it's not coming across
Well,
on a
and I'm
state
just-
level.
And I'm just coming across as this is me, this is Barry Gordon thinking, you know, my perspective and looking at this and saying, yeah, I'm gun shy. I am, I'll admit it. Because what I don't want to do is have us do something that is going to have the possible effect of limiting our ability to provide services to our community.
So I've talked to the people that want homestead, and I've told them about the possibility of us taking a hit. And then I've suggested, I said, so should we take a hit? What do you think? Because you're getting relief on your property taxes. What do you think about what we've talked about in the past, a dedicated fund that you would pay on your water bill that goes directly to streets? And that infrastructure is maintained in streets. And I'm thinking, you know, they would come back and say, no, our water bill's too high. And then they're very thoughtful, and I haven't had a single one say no. So, you know, they're all reasonable. They want some relief from the property tax, but they also recognize the infrastructure needs to be maintained. So that, you know, and I think as a council, we should all take all that into account. And I personally like the designated fund because you can't play politics with it. You have to do streets. You have to. You can't shift it to someone. When right now you can shift it. It just depends on the integrity of our city manager, whether.
Well, I understand, you know.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
For the record, I'm a proponent of the homestead exemption. I am. I want to do something for our people.
There wasn't anybody that was against it when we had our retreat.
It's just when we saw the numbers.
But the numbers do play a factor in it, and I'm gonna say something because we had a vote the other day about red light cameras and stuff, and that right there is going to cost the city a minimum of a couple $100,000, a minimum of revenue that's coming in.
Why did they have to be the ones that collected the money? Is there not another vendor?
It's not a vendor, it's an actual law that you put a registration hold on the vehicle, but we have.
No, I'm talking about, it was about the company, the red light company.
Redflex.
Yeah, Redflex, hiring them to do the, scofflaw. So,
Okay, but moving along.
Yeah, but you don't have to hire
Governor-
them. There's other
I asked
companies.
Governor Abbott himself about what was going on in the legislature, and he did say it was gonna be a priority. And he did say it was still negotiable, but that was gonna be a big task that he was gonna do. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Barry from the standpoint is that we need to be careful about what we're doing. And this, I mean, it is important. I think we're all for it. Yet, does it have to be done today? Does it have to be done immediately? It's about, I believe if I'm understanding correctly, even if we go through July, we still have the ability to put the
no,
homestead exemption.
March 13th.
That's March 13th.
This is how we
the
miss it
date.
every year.
But March 13th is the date,
Here,
so that
I'm
we
gonna
show
pull
up.
up the dates that DCAD gave me. So the drop dead date is July the 1st.
11th, excuse me.
March 11th is the first deadline for it to be already shown and reflected on the notice of appraised value. But the drop dead date, the last date that you could, that we would have to have a signed resolution or ordinance to DCAD would be July 1st.
And because of the fact that our citizens, it troubles me that in one breath, we are all concerned about the citizens. But then something that the citizens have been so vocal on it's like, well, we'll get to it, we'll get to it. Just, it would be so, I mean, it would just give, I think, a lot of credibility to this council that if on March the 11th, when they got those things, they could see something on their statements that we've done this for them.
Absolutely. I think it's wrong. And I don't have a problem with doing a designated fund, like Leslie was talking about.
I mean, I think that's a
You
good
don't
idea as well.
know.
I really do
And
that.
what you're saying is,
But we need to show
the
them.
boogeyman's coming, and that's why we're not gonna do this. It's wrong. Well, it is.
Words into my mouth for
I'm not-
that, but
But, okay, March 11th, ideally, that's what we want.
Yeah.
But if we do a compromise and we wait till legislative session's over with, we,
Oh, it may not be over with then, though. They go on and on and
Well,
on.
we'll know
God-
something by July for sure. though.
yeah, by
By
May.
July, we will know exactly what's going on.
Then we could, it won't be as clean, but we could,
We can still
I mean,
do
I'm
it.
willing to compromise, but I really want, you know, I really see this being a benefit to the citizens
Well-
that have home, that have made this their home, that have bought homes, that are stakeholders in our community. And, you know,
Well, let's see,
that's-
1, 3, 5, and at the at-large might not be here, so you wouldn't be able to see it.
I'd see it on my tax return.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be able to see it through, is my point.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah.
see, that's politics to me. I think,
But it is, they just used it, said that they
no,
talked to.
no, because when I'm out campaigning or someone's out campaigning, they're gonna have to answer that question, what do you think about the homestead?
Oh, well, we all would say we wanted it. It doesn't happen, never comes to
None of
fruition.
us are gonna say we wanna raise taxes.
No.
Yeah.
But let's, I would like to talk about some consequences. I'm in favor of a homestead exemption. But let's talk about some consequences of it. What's it gonna do to rental property? It's gonna raise the rents on the people that rent, because
It shifts.
yeah, it moves the burden to the businesses and the rental property. So, you know, we gotta factor in what effect does it have on attracting businesses to Duncanville if they're gonna be paying a larger share, because our community is a bedroom community. We have a vast majority of just
No, wait a minute.
houses.
You're saying because giving residents a homestead exemption,
Giving homeowners.
homeowners,
Yeah.
okay,
And it's some, I don't know the percent, there's some percent of us own our homes.
right?
And so we would get a break. The people that rent don't get that break. They're not homesteading.
I understand that, but I mean,
But,
do you not think that people that own their homes, y'all were talking about other cities a while ago, all the other cities give it, why don't we?
they don't.
Well, I'm
Yeah, they
just,
do.
I'm saying, let's just look at the consequences of doing it.
Okay, well, and you're right, Dennis, you know, there will be some consequences. But for us to say that if we do this, it's gonna shift, and I guess it will, it'll shift some of the money to businesses. Right now, we don't have one, and businesses aren't flocking to Duncanville.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, that's just the reality. We don't have one, and they're not chopping. It's the same thing that I've been told since we're landlocked, we're this, and we don't have one. So having one, you know, and we're gonna shift stuff to businesses, and that's gonna stop business from coming, they're not coming now. Not like we want them.
I don't think the impact is that so great that would keep the business.
Right, that's what I'm-
If the,
I don't either.
But I'm
it's
saying,
profitable for them to be.
when we
here.
say stuff like that, I think, you know, we're kind of misleading, because businesses aren't coming now. They're not, and we don't have.
There's some are.
Yeah, okay, there
I don't
are.
sell a
But I
sheet.
mean, but to the point where if we do this, is it gonna be so impactful that they're not gonna come? I don't think we need to say it. I don't think we need to say it.
If we look at the July date and let our community know that we are exercising extreme fiduciary responsibility, knowing that we are going to do something.
Then
that
tell the
entire-
truth.
Let me finish.
Well, tell the
That-
truth when you say
That the
it.
entire council is in favor
Tell
of
the
a
truth.
homestead exemption. The entire council is in favor of a homestead exemption. and that we will do something in order to provide a homestead exemption in 2019 in accordance with the July 1, 2019 deadline. We will do that, but we will know exactly what the impact is going to be rather than us doing it now.
Don't say impact.
March.
Don't say impact. Spell it out. You're
Effect.
waiting to see if Austin's gonna lock it in, so you cannot, you can't raise taxes above a certain
No,
percentage.
what I'm saying, I use impact intentionally because if we do a homestead exemption and they put a revenue cap on the city, there will be an impact.
Because if we can't raise your taxes anymore, then you shouldn't get a homestead exemption, or not much more.
That's
the
not
other
what I'm
thing that
saying.
I'd like
That's
to-
not what I'm
It
saying.
sounds like it.
But that is the
That's
truth.
exactly what it sounds
That
like.
is the truth.
So the other
But I'm
thing
saying
that I
that we
want,
will be able to gauge the
That's
impact.
what it sounds
We will
like.
still give the homestead exemption. But we
the
will
other-
gauge the impact based
You
on what
wouldn't
the
be waiting till
legislature
July
does.
1st if you weren't waiting to see what Austin's doing. What is Austin doing? They're saying they want to put a cap on what you can charge on taxes. The percentage that will go up.
Exactly, and what I'm
Yeah,
saying
but you
is
need to
our
tell the
fiduciary
truth. We're not waiting.
responsibility as a council to our city says that we should be able to understand the exact impact of that before we pull a trigger on something. And we would know it if we work with the July deadline. Now,
And-
there's another excellent point that's been made, and I'm not discounting it, is that the council around this table is not gonna be the council in July. I get that.
It'll never happen.
so Mayor, I'd like to have the floor for a moment. Too.
Yes.
The other thing, when Dennis talked about consequences, and this is also in our retreat, is that when you limit or when you change this, these funds are designated and it is revenue that the city does lose. Yes, it goes back to the citizens, but you always have to keep in mind what ad valorem pays for. And it pays for our police and it pays for our fire. And those costs are ever increasing and we need to be watchful of that. And if, I'm telling you, from a budget perspective, that you have to do that. Fire has gone up, DeSoto has increased what they're doing. We're number 3 now, is that correct, sir, in terms of that?
We can't even hire enough policemen, and we voted to give them the money that we weren't paying them to the ones that are getting overtime.
But I'm just saying, we need to be able to watch the issue, because you're taking money out.
And I don't advocate that we just give a homestead. You know, we need to see the numbers,
We
the
do need to
impact
see
of
the
it,
numbers.
and just make, you know, the scofflaw that, you know, I voted against it. But I knew that it would have a negative impact, but I thought that the punitive measures of that was wrong, and I did that as a moral choice. So, you know, that's
Because-
gonna impact it, so we need the impact of, well, there was a minimum homestead, and so we need to find out.
5,000 is the minimum.
And what kind of hit is that gonna do to our budget? And then take the worst case scenario from Abbott of what, 2% or something that you can, property valuations cap, and we just see, you know, is this doable?
Well, there's, I guess,
Maybe we should just go through the
Yeah.
president.
Yeah.
So you can see
Yeah.
all
I'm
the
gonna say one
information.
thing though, the fact that you brought that up about the red
Red light camera.
red light camera thing is exactly what people said. This was about making money for the city, wasn't about really traffic. And you said it, you shouldn't have said it. Because
I said
you
it.
said it cost
I said
us.
it.
It doesn't
because-
cost you.
Because the city, yeah, when you're losing the ability to collect money, when you're having to pay for a rental program that you already have in place, and when you can't use.
Yeah, but we were lied to about that too. We were told that that contract
Whether or
would be
not,
broken.
we still have it.
Oh, and Austin was
so,
gonna do away with it.
That's Austin's call. I'm talking about Duncanville. And if we're gonna have
We
a
just had
system,
it.
if we're gonna have a system in place and we are not going to fund it, or have the ability to fund it, or we're taking a loss on it, then we need to figure out, what are we gonna give up?
We were never supposed to fund red light cameras. That
What are we
was,
gonna
we
give
were
up?
saving lives.
What is the
Not
dollar
fun.
impact on our budget as a result of the
It was 102.
About $900,000 a year
$900,000?
lost revenue.
Wow.
And we gotta make that up somewhere.
Is there someone else that can be hired besides them?
Besides Red Flex, I'd have to research that. and
Yeah, I
figure
think
that
there
out.
is. How about that?
So the morality,
Yeah.
Well, Red Flex, let me tell you what it is. Red Flex has the information. They prepare a file and they send it to Dallas County. And Dallas County charges a fee to put that hold, administrative fee to put that hold on there. So there's two parties to that. There's the party that creates the file, which is Red Flex. And then there's the party that puts administrative hold, which is Dallas County.
But,
That 900 is net.
yeah, the state though is the one,
That's gross.
but the state is the one that requires that the company send it to them, or the county, I mean, be Dallas County.
So we can
Right,
only
Dallas
cancel
County's the
both
only enforcement agency that
Right.
we have.
Okay, so they're the enforcer. There's got to be another collector besides them.
well, be that as it may, the impact on our funds is $900,000 a year.
How come we didn't hear about that company that's collecting our taxes besides Linebarger? The one that's in,
They don't have anything to do with the red light cameras.
I know they don't,
So
but-
I think what Richard's saying is because Red Flex already administers the program, they already have all the data, so it's just a matter then of them taking that data and transmitting it to the county. If you introduce now a third-party contractor, now they're having to take that data from Red Flex, put it in whatever
well, they
format.
can take it from Dallas County.
No, we send it to Dallas
I
County.
understand, but why couldn't Dallas County give it to them?
They don't have it. Dallas County has nothing until Red Flex.
Until Red Flex
provides
sends
a
that
copy.
to them, and then that's what they use to know that someone's got a red light ticket outstanding, and they put a hold on their vehicle registration, which then requires them to come in and pay their ticket. So without that, there's not that impetus for someone to pay their red light ticket. So we will still see some people voluntarily paying their red light tickets, but there will be a large number of people who will now not pay it. That's the lost revenue from the scofflaw.
And I'd like to say this, if you, running that red light camera is a civil issue. And if you were to go to civil court and get a judgment against you, you would get, the worst they could do is get a lien against your house or something. They can't come out and do anything punitive. But with this action, they can go to the county and say, you can't register your car, therefore you can't drive anymore, therefore you can't go to work, or you can, but you can get picked up by the police if you're driving without a registration, and then you're in jail, and it's a spiral down, and that's punitive. And that's my disagreement with the whole scofflaw thing. It's punitive. It's punishment for a civil action. And if there's any way you could do it without it being punitive, I'm all for it. But
Yeah, the whole
The
red light
morality of that
camera.
decision impacted our city right now, $900,000 a year.
And is $900,000 worth a person's ability to be able to drive, free movement? That's a civil, I mean, that's a liberty.
X number of
That's
people that run the
constitutional.
red light and pay versus X number of people that have no issue with it whatsoever in terms of the $900,000 on our impact in terms of our budgeting system is significant.
I don't think you put money on a person's civil liberties. I don't think you put.
Nobody wanted those.
You can put in
Nobody.
jail. You can get them put in jail if you take the process down. You can get put in jail for not paying that.
Arlington voted them
So
out.
we've taken a moral issue and we put it up against
Houston
a
voted
dollar
them out.
value issue, and the morality, you say, is outweighing the $900,000 that we are now taking out of our budget and no longer able to use for city services.
Not city services.
Oh, no,
That's
you
that's
cannot
street
use it for
maintenance.
city
That's street-
services.
That's for traffic
Traffic
only.
safety.
Well,
Only.
It's designated,
It goes for things that otherwise would be paid by the general fund.
yeah.
Richard,
No, it's real
what
specific.
is the net amount? I mean, 900,000 is gross.
Yeah, that's,
What's the net amount of
Yeah,
that?
you take.
but
take
even
the
bringing it
expenses
up, it's
out.
not supposed to be a revenue producer. It's supposed to be saving
I'm
lives.
not saying it's revenue.
Let me ask you,
We're hearing it.
would it matter who's paying?
I know it's not
who's paying this
50%.
thing? Would it matter if it's a Duncanville resident or residents outside of Duncanville paying that?
Well, that's, when we ran our studies, there was a
It showed that
large-
most of them were out of
Outside.
Duncanville.
No, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah,
We
it's
read
not
this-
Duncanville
We read that
people.
study,
Yeah.
read that
Well,
study
then I'll
4
go
years
back to
ago.
your argument. Why would you come here and have a business or come here to buy from us, the store or restaurant or anything else, if you might get a red light camera?
Yeah, we read that study 4 years ago, and that study 4 years ago saying that those red light fees was paid by outside residents of Duncanville.
Yeah, and we had people saying that they weren't coming back here either because they thought we were.
Then our streets were safer because they
See,
had red
really,
lights.
No, they're not.
They've got
I'd say.
lots of-
Red lights.
Okay, well, we can't discount the fact that the decision's been made and the dollar impact is there. So let's talk about
Okay, so
the dollar amount on the exemption.
what I wanted to talk about in the very beginning of this is to remind everyone that 52% of your tax bill does go to the independent school district. So the schools are the primary benefiter of property tax. We only get a quarter of that. The rest of that goes to the county. And this is a chart that depicts state school funding. And you can see in the 2006, 7, 8, we were going through reform, and so the funding was increasing. But since 2008, you see that trend line generally is downward. And they're projecting over $3.5 billion further decrease in school funding over the next few years. And you can see that
Excuse me, we don't take citizen input during briefings.
You didn't have any citizen input. I did. And I can take it. And, yes. But I will say something, that every one of those entities that were shown up there did have homestead exemptions that you showed in the,
no, ma'am, they did not.
go back.
Well, I'll get to that in a second.
One slide. That's what I'm talking about.
We'll get
Yeah,
to that
I'll
slide.
get to it in a second. So if we look at the reduction in school financing, you can see that in 2008, the local share was 44.8 versus state of 44.9 and federal at 10.3. And so then the 2019 balance, you're looking at 55% coming from local and only 35% from the state and 9.5% from federal. So you can see that reduction in continued
So what you're saying about
reliance.
education so far?
I'm sorry?
This is about education.
Yeah.
Right.
Property tax for education.
Yeah, I'm framing the argument of how property taxes, where they're trending and what needs to be fixed. And so on this chart, I've got the taxes that the citizens pay on average, single-family residence. That's the blue column going up here. And so you can see that in 2008, you know, we were in the housing crash, or the beginning of the housing crash. It continues to go down, and then a little bit of trending in here in the 11, 12, 13, where we're trying to get back on track. Then after 13, of course, the increased property value is increasing. And this green line here represents what the consumer price index, based on that 2008 tax, where we should have been, or where we would have been if we just followed the CPI. So you can see it under most of those years from 2009 to through 16, that just based on that inflation factor, we were far under where we should have been. And then with rising values in 2017, you see that consumer price index just barely gets back within the blue, and then now with the increase in 2018, there's a little bit of room between that and the average tax value. And then I also charted on this the tax rate. You can see that because of the decline there, we had to bump up the tax rate, kept it even for 3 years, bumped it up again, and then it's been the same all the way across. And of course, we reduced it a penny for 2018.
But appraisals went up.
Appraisals went
Tell
up.
the
but
whole
we reduced
story.
it.
I wish that you guys would
Well,
sell as much.
That is telling the story. Look at the trend.
I know,
charted
but
it
I'm
out.
saying, I wish that you would spend as much time and effort when you're wanting to spend things as you do on selling us on why we can't have a homestead exemption. It's just incredible to me.
I'm not trying to sell you on anything. I'm just trying to show you the facts of where we're
I
at.
know, but we don't get the facts like turning cars over for 2 years.
That's a good chart. Can you email me that?
I certainly can. All right, so this is the information I pulled off the Dallas County Appraisal District. And this shows those cities who offer an optional homestead exemption. All these cities over here do not offer that as of 2018.
Okay? And we're talking about the other taxing entities, not cities.
Talking about cities.
No.
You're talking about the county, the community college district, and the school district. They are required by law to
Maybe
allocate
we should be required
an
by law too.
an
Could you
exemption.
repeat that again?
So the county, the community college district and the school district are required by law to set aside a certain amount on homestead exemption. So
Are you sure the community college?
I'm not sure about the community
Because
college,
they
I
did
know the
it
county.
on their own vote.
Voluntary.
But I can also say too that when I looked at my tax bill this year, the percentage that it went up from the city was less than what went up by percentage on the county, the community college, and the school district. They all went up by 10%. My city taxes went up 8.5%. That's because we did a 10 reduction.
Okay, and so I took the Dallas County cities and I charted out the residential tax levy versus the commercial tax levy. So most of these cities that do give a homestead exemption, of course, with the exception of University Park, they have a high commercial tax value. The reason University Park is such an anomaly is that their average single-family residence, and I'm really reaching back, it's been a while since I looked at that number, but it was some incredible number like 1.3 or 1.4 million dollars. So their housing values are so out of whack, that explains why they're where they're at. But everybody else pretty much has a pretty substantial commercial base. And then when you get over here in the ones that don't offer homestead, like Cedar Hill, DeSoto, Lancaster, Louisville, Duncanville, Mesquite, you see that commercial amount, business amount is much smaller compared to the residential. And so then what I did here is I wanted to take and go back and do some calculations of how much lost revenue we currently give through the exemptions, the over 65, the disabled persons, veterans, and the 100% disabled veterans. And if you look at that from the standpoint of lost revenue in 2012, that had been $632,680 in 2013, or you can look at that number as it builds, and you can see that since 2012 to 2018, we've given up $5.2 million based on those exemptions.
Giving up their money, the citizens' money.
Yeah.
Taxpayers' money. Let's keep where that money's coming from.
So this is the cumulative impact of providing those exemptions. Now, if we look at a 4% property tax cap, and if we base that on 2014, we would have given up only $115,000. 197 in 2015, 2016 had been $500,000, 2017 $245,000, in 2018 that would have reduced the revenue to the city for $711,000.
And on this chart, what I did is, because you have a $5,000 minimum on your exemption, I calculated the break point. So if you gave a 1% homestead exemption, essentially only the people that have homes valued over $502,920 would essentially fall into that something above 5,000. And so you're going to have a whole lot of people back here toward the back end of valuations that are going to get a whole lot more than a 1% if you do 1%, because $5,000 is a whole lot more than 1% of the taxable value of their homes. And so then the break-even point at a 2% would be $250,000, and then the break-even at 3% would be $166,672.
Richard, what do you mean when you say the break-even point?
Well, it's not really a break-even; it's just a break point. That everybody that's below that gets a $5,000 minimum, and so that's what I'm trying to show. That at 1%, only people that have houses in the high value would actually receive a 1%. Everybody else down here is going to receive way more than 1%, or something more than 1%. I would value that. As you get closer and closer to that $500,000,
It's closer and closer to 1%.
it's closer and closer to 1%. That's correct. And the same thing with the 2% and 3% calculations. So, in terms of dollar cost, at 1%, it'd be $291,053 in revenue that the city would no longer have. 2%, $293,000 we wouldn't have, and then at 3%, $313,000 that we wouldn't have.
So why is it $2,000 something difference with the 2 and 1?
With the 1 and the 3? Or
No,
the 1 and the 2?
yes, yeah, why is it something?
But again, because you got so many people with that minimum.
Okay.
And then if you look at that from the standpoint of what's that annual average tax reduction per residential partial on a 1%, that would give average homes, average parcels of $37.43 tax break. At a 2%, it'd be $37.81 annual. So both of those would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 a month. And then $40.30 at a 3% for the annual reduction in tax.
So just, I want to make sure I just understood what you said. That 3781, 3740, that is the
Savings
the
that
net-
you would realize
the
with
net value
with-
applied to my property taxes
that,
annually.
well, that's on the single family resident, the average single family residence value. If you were right on that, that's exactly what you would get. If you're less than that, then you're probably going to see more. Am I saying that right? And then if you're higher, you'll be seeing a little bit less than that.
Okay.
And so we got to wait on the state to give people $3.78.
No, you don't have to wait on the state. Barry's saying he wanted to wait on the state to see.
Now, let's go back. If the state has their way, we're going to be at something less than this 4%, probably about half of that, which means that instead of having a negative impact to our budget of $711,000, it's going to be a lot more like $1.4 million.
I don't believe this. I don't believe we spend so much time on
And then
figuring out
here's
how
the
not to give
important
people an
dates that
exemption.
I've talked about already here. That the drop dead deadline, of course, is July the 1st, and then the other dates. Really, this date here is an important date, more so for cities themselves for internal use, because that first preliminary EVR is what I used to do our budget projections, and we kind of.
It has to be a part of that?
I'm sorry.
It has to be a part of that?
For him,
For
personally.
for me, it's an important date, but, you know, I can calculate around it if I don't know that. And so, with that, direction discussion.
You know how I feel, I just feel more prudent that we are going to do something for our citizens. We'll let them know we're gonna do something for our citizens. Our fiduciary responsibility and stewardship over the city leads me to say, let's just see what's gonna happen in the legislature. Guarantee our citizens we're going to get a homestead, general homestead exemption. And even with a new council, I think that new council is gonna go along with what we're deciding today
Oh, my God.
in terms of
You don't
consensus.
know what the new council's gonna
As I see it, if we're gonna say we're gonna do it, the minimum we do is 1%. Whether we do it now or do it July the 1st, it's still 1%. I don't see what Wayne's gonna do, because we can't give less than 1%.
That's fair. Yeah, it's a good argument. It's a good argument, Dennis. I can't fight that.
Well, and if we're gonna do it, I'd do the 3%.
You do the what?
I would do the 3%.
It's not that much more.
Yeah, it benefits.
Yeah, I would do 2%. And it's a big difference. I mean, you're.
And we left, to my understanding, we left the tree saying that we were gonna do at least
2.5.
I mean, when we left there, and it seemed like between October
I
and
threw
now.
out 3%.
And now,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where the discussions have happened that we left there saying we were gonna do this. And this was how much we were gonna
That's what you
do.
told me too.
Yeah, we are gonna do it, but we decided it was gonna be about
No.
2.5.
Okay, but now, if we decided that, now what you're saying is that if the state says something else, it's not gonna be 2.5, it's gonna be less than that. That's what I'm hearing you saying.
No, it's not gonna be less than 2.5.
Okay, then if it's not gonna be less than 2.5, why are we waiting?
Oh, maybe we're talking about two different things. I'm talking about the cap's not gonna be less than 2.5.
He's talking about
She's
percentage.
talking about the
Yeah.
percentage.
We left the retreat, but we had a percentage that, well, this is what we're gonna do.
Do I recall, was it 2.5, Patrick?
Patrick, I think you may have already gone, but one of the things that came up after that was that hey, the minimum was 5,000.
Yeah, 5,000.
And so the numbers
That was
were-
new information, yeah, we didn't know at the time that it was 5,000.
See, for most people, whether we do a 1 or a 3, they're gonna get a $5,000 exemption.
Right.
So,
Now, I was there for that part.
yeah,
Okay.
so
Right.
let's go ahead and benefit a few more and give them a 3%. We're gonna turn around and raise garbage rates if, $6, if we keep the same, which is what everybody wants to do.
Right,
So there's still gonna be an impact on the citizens.
absolutely.
It's time to do.
And there's gonna be an impact on the city.
Yes.
It's gonna,
Right.
staff's gonna have to really.
Right, and
polish
I
the
think,
budget.
you know, it's acknowledgeable that there are gonna be consequences. I mean, and I just think that, you know, we have to prepare and plan for those consequences. I mean, it's, when you make these kind of decisions, I mean, that's what happens. But there are consequences for every choice. Every choice involves some type of consequence.
Bring up the bar chart, the horizontal bar chart with the one, keep going, that one. Do you have any idea how many single-family residences that are owned, not rented, in the city that are over $250,000 in value?
If you give me a second and continue discussion, I'll give you an estimate. Or actually, a pretty hard number.
You want us to continue discussing?
Well, I don't want you sitting here looking at me while I'm.
But you're so cute, Richard.
No, he's not asking about.
I know we were all hit in the pocket with the increased property values this year.
I'd also like to bring up a point that I think, and tell me if my thinking's wrong, but when you had the bar graphs where it talks about the residents and then the businesses, my feeling is that rental homes are businesses. And that they should come over to the orange zone, or the blue zone, whichever way they're going. And they should be treated as businesses. They should be taxed as businesses. That's my
Well, those come from ECAD. I mean, it's just the business, the
I know
commercial
that, and there's no
value,
way you can know that
Right.
until we do the registration.
Right, we estimate, we have an estimate of the number of rental properties in the city.
About 30-something%.
But we're not sure, it's just an estimate.
Yeah, which is why I was trying to follow your line of thinking on,
Well, my point is that some of our constituents that rent their property.
right?
And they're gonna be upset, they're gonna be hollering because their landlord raises the rent on them.
Right?
And,
No, no,
it's-
That's what goes with
They'll
rental.
encourage them to be homeowners.
That's right.
Yeah, well, that's the other side.
And see, another thing is.
You can go ahead and buy the house.
And Mark, he's always been talking about having workshops for the citizens in Duncanville to learn how to be homeowners. And this could be one of the selling points, invest in Duncanville.
Right on.
This is one of your benefits, you get a homestead exemption.
Yeah, because that was a thought one time the council had, previous council, was that if the rents were high enough here, that it might discourage people from renting. But they were so low, was why people were buying cheap properties and turned them into rental properties.
This will shift it a little bit. I mean, it's not a big shift,
No, it's not.
but
It's not.
it's a shift.
So, what we're going back to that one slide, if you go into the middle bracket there, it was 30, roughly $38 is what most people are gonna get in terms of their exemption, $38 a year.
And if we do a street fund,
Yeah.
we do a street fund, we can make that up.
So you asked how many were less than or how many were more than
Greater.
250,000?
Greater.
Approximately
250?
300.
You said 250?
Yes,
The
250,000
yeah.
and $6. How many are over that?
Yeah.
307 parcels.
And how many parcels do we have total? City?
Like 22,000 or something.
No, I think it's
Or was it 12?
11.
I've got on
7,000.
parcels 7,778 total
How
parcels.
much?
7,778. Those are taxable value parcels. That doesn't include parcels that have exemptions, total exemptions on them. I don't know how many's in that. I can get that number pretty quickly too. I know a spreadsheet I have has that on it too. Those are taxable.
Does that include businesses and?
No, this is only residential.
Pure residence. So each of us sitting around the table is a property owner. And we learned that the city council has passed a general homestead exemption. And I'm gonna get $38 a year less.
Es mejor que nada.
Say what? Say it again, please.
Better than nothing.
And so as a citizen, say, thank you very much, city council, for doing that, I got a whole $38. Is the political capital that's has enough strength and enough traction to say that we're glad we did this?
Well, no, I'd like to give a whole lot more.
And it's cumulative too. I mean, throughout the years, when you have property rates go up and you have, and you have to administer the tax rate, we still have, the homeowner still has that exemption and it's
It carries.
shifted.
Yeah,
it's
it
shifted.
carries.
And
Yeah.
it will be better in the future as we go forward.
Yeah. I'm saying that just
And it also
for
gives,
thinking.
yeah, it also
Put
gives us,
that in your computer and gel it around for a couple seconds. You know,
it also
see
gives
what-
us standing to go to them and say, and put out that, you know, for street fund. You know, we've given it back in Homestead, we need to do it, yeah, we're gonna take it back to
It's
street
still,
fund.
Will citizens not say, take that as pay me now, pay me later?
Yeah, and and I have been having this discussion with them, is that with the street fund, it's designated. You have to spend it on streets, you can't play politics with it. In the general fund right now, you can shift it, but if you want the streets, the infrastructure always to be maintained, and not to have and it has been in the past, I was on councils when we deferred maintenance, which was right, but that takes that away from future councils to be able to defer maintenance and to change it out of street. You know, now we're spending $1 to $2 million, and in the past we spent way less than that.
Okay.
And
Well, one important factor, you know, and I'm having to take this to heart, is that the change in the council with that July date. I understand there's concern over that, and personally, I'd rather just set that aside and say, okay, Gordon, you're wrong. Don't worry about the July. You need to do something earlier in July so that we as a council, the council that sits around this table today, can take the responsibility for doing this today.
Well, I'm not so worried about,
Instead of a new council trying to figure it out.
I'm not so worried about the council that's sitting around the table doing it. I'm more concerned about the fact that I want the citizens to be able to recognize and visibly, tangibly see that this is something that I'm going to get. They heard my voice, they read my emails, it didn't get deleted. They listened to my phone calls, they listened to what I said. Everybody around here, we've said so many times, wants this. Everybody wants it. Let's show them that we have heard what they've said. And that's the only reason, not to rush anything, I'm a proponent of the March date, so that when they get those things, those statements from DCAD, they'll see that.
Give us that date slide again, Richard, please. Okay, so Dennis is proposing 3. We closed the retreat without Johnette and Patrick at about 2.5. That was just talk and discussion consensus. So we were missing 2, when we were talking 2.5.
Pardon?
It has to be an even number.
It does have to be an even number.
Oh, it does have to be an even number.
Yeah.
No
and,
decimal.
So it has to be 4 instead of 3?
Well, keep in mind that that's,
We can have 6.
That's how they teach it at Baylor.
It's an even number, right?
10's in there? 10%?
It has to be a whole number.
Yeah, whole number.
Not even whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hole, okay, well, let's get a big hole.
Leslie?
The average inflation rate in the last 20 years has been 3.2%. That's it.
How many years?
3.2%, the average over the last 20 years.
20 years.
And so, and, you know, this year, last year, year before, it's been around 2.5, 2.3, yeah. So I don't see, I see us being able to keep up with what and maintain what we have. Because I don't see Austin doing 2.5, I really don't. I see more of a 4, possibly 6. In my,
Well, you're more involved with them anyway, aren't you? With Abbott?
it's the Wild Wild West down there. Until it happens. Talking to Yvonne Davis, and she's on the floor, and I'm watching her on the computer. Are you talking to me?
But you're involved with the Republican Party.
Yeah, yeah, but my Democratic representatives too.
Well, I know, I talked to him,
Because of the city.
but I'm talking
But,
about what Abbott's doing.
I think, you know more, because he's a personal friend. Anyway, this is what I'm thinking. I'd like to know what the city manager sees it, how he sees it, because he's been very quiet.
Shell shock.
It's in, not at all.
Well, the city manager doesn't want to give up revenue.
I know he doesn't, but I want to see what he's thinking, because he's
Pretty
just, I know
easy.
he's giving
I'll
us a
answer
big.
for you.
I know he's giving, I know stop law was a big hit, and it's not gonna change my opinion, but at least I know my vote, but I want to know, I want to vote on the facts. And as the manager, I want to know what he's thinking, that he's gonna have to cut services or staffing, or he thinks, yeah, we can run a tight ship, but we can do it. I just want to know what he's thinking.
That's a fair question, Councilmember. But you know, certainly this is a policy decision that the council has to make. You know, what we're trying to do is provide you the information and so that you know what the impacts are, and we've shown you those impacts. So, you know, what does that mean? Is that at the end of the world? No. You know, we're gonna have to cut staff? I don't think so. I hope not. I don't think we will. A lot of it's gonna depend on what the state legislature does. We're pretty convinced that they're gonna do something, but we don't know what it will be. Last legislative session, they seemed to settle around 6%. If we get 6%, I think we'll be pretty good. Is it going to cut services? I don't know that I can say that at this point. Again, it's going to depend on what we see, what evaluations have to do. Will it limit our opportunities? I think is more likely. And you know, we've been able to do a lot of things over the last few years with the additional revenue by increasing street maintenance. We're able to replace roofs on these buildings that haven't been replaced, leaking roofs that we've been able to do from fund savings over the last few years. We were able to do a tax rate reduction this year because of those increased values. So I think that the more revenue you cut, you know, it's just going to limit those opportunities. You know, is this by itself going to mean we have to cut? No. Is a property tax caps by itself going to mean we have to cut? No. But all those things have a cumulative effect, and that's really what we were trying to say. So again, I don't think it's, you know, going to end things or that we're going to have to cut services or anything like that, but I do think that it may limit us in our ability to do more. It may limit our ability to increase street maintenance. It may limit some other things, but it's hard to say at this point. We'll work with whatever we have.
So it's not a doomsday scenario.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I got out of what he said is that, I mean, there have been opportunities in the past, and there'll still be opportunities. It just may not be as many opportunities. We're still gonna have opportunities to do something. Remember, we passed the bond. So I don't know which buildings have been leaking, but some of, we're gonna get some new buildings. I mean, so opportunities will still be there.
And that's also a marketing terminology, limit our possibilities and our potential. Very good there, very good. That's marketing.
Well, I think, you know, I mean, I think all you have to do is look at the things that we have been able to do over the last few years. And changing, you know, our 20-year-old financial software system and human resources system has been because we've been able to do, because we had the revenues, increasing the street maintenance, as Councilman Thomas mentioned. That has been because of those increasing revenues. So it's not, no, doing this is not a doomsday scenario. If the governor gets 2.5% cap, then we're going to be closer to probably some real hurt. Yeah. But again, I think it's a matter of, you know, we won't be able to do maybe as many things as the council might want to do. And y'all come and bring things to us
Right.
and want us to do things. You had that discussion at your retreat as well about benefits and things like that. Well, you know, some of those things are going to have to be limited.
But I hear from a lot of my residences too, that they want the city to live within their budget and with, okay, let me reword that. Let me reword that. Not to be spending at the rate they are. And, you know, they have to, And so that's the other part of good stewardship is you don't buy everything you want. And I'll say it again, I thought that was the biggest mess I ever saw was to turn the cars over after 2 years for $500,000. That was ridiculous. So,
Well, but I will tell you, John, that practice has been going on ever since you've been a council person.
not every 2
And-
years, because we looked at some of the age in some of those cars, and they were a lot older than that.
Well, there's some of
Deer.
that, but I will tell you that.
Well, let's not get off.
Let's get back on
Yeah,
point,
let's-
please.
No.
Let's
We got
get,
another
let's
agenda.
get back on
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Then we have a
and-
meeting tomorrow.
All right, the point is, we need a number. We need to walk out of here tonight with a number for staff to put together a resolution for a general homestead exemption of X percent.
I'm okay with 1%. If y'all want to go higher, you can.
But then it said 3.
Well, no, you can go with 3, but I'm okay with 1.
Well, remember that as property values go up, those charts, they're changed.
All
And
kicks
so
in.
it just kicks in higher and higher and higher.
So Leslie's at 1, Dennis, you're still at 3? Don?
Right now, and this is probably the same way I was at the retreat, is I'm more conservative from that standpoint. I'm more at 1. However, I would say if the date gets later, that I would be interested in seeing what's going to happen and possibly making a change or making a change the following year.
She didn't give me a number.
I said
Yeah.
1.
1, okay. Patrick?
3.
Donette?
3.
Mark?
I just thought 1 was just almost like, don't
Yeah.
give it to me if you give me 1.
Yeah. It's not gonna make a
I'm
difference.
really at 2, but I can, so let me just start 3. But I'm really at 2, but there's no round, 2's around the table, so,
I was at 2.
okay. So I'm really at 2,
But
but I can go.
the majority is
I don't want to go
3.
down to 1, I know that.
Yeah,
No, there's
one
3
is
others.
token, I don't think any, you
Yeah, I
know,
agree.
I
No,
personally,
we're ones, right?
I'm saying, no,
But they make it not token, because y'all are for it.
no, I'm just saying
Do
from a
that.
citizen's point of view, from a citizen's point of view, 1 is a token deal.
It
Right,
is.
it is.
That's what I'm
Right,
saying.
exactly.
It's ridiculous.
No, no, it's not a token.
Yes,
For
it
those whose homes are less than
They
the
still get
5,000.
5,000.
And that's the majority of the homes in Duncanville.
That's correct.
That's not a token. It is a token.
It's negligible when you look at the total amount of money, though, 291,000 versus 313.
So what did you say, Richard, what's the impact if the houses, the appraisals go up?
Well,
How does that affect this?
Well, of course, the percentage of the revenue goes up. So there, if you do a 1% exemption, that just is going to increase as property values go up. And of course, vice versa, property values go down and that decreases. So I'm just saying that it's a linear thing that's tied to property values. That's all I'm saying. But I was gonna look back and see, y'all asked me how many homes were impacted at the 2%, which was 250,000, but let me tell you how many homes are impacted at the 1%. You only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You only have 6 properties or parcels on here that would receive above 5,000, meaning that the majority of citizens are going to receive actually more than 1%, even though that's the 1%. They're going to receive something more than 1%.
So we got 2 1s, 2 2s, and 3 3s.
Yes.
Any chance of compromising at 2? In the
If-
We could shut the city down.
Any chance of compromising up to 3? Why do we have to go
Yeah,
there?
right.
I mean, yeah.
Good question, Patrick. You know, hey,
We just shut the city down.
Yeah.
What?
We just,
And build a wall.
You're shutting, you gotta, the government shut down. I'll compromise it too.
And mine was 1, but I'd be willing to move, but I'd still like to see what the legislature's gonna do.
Well,
You can start at 1 and then next year they can raise it.
Oh, my
I can have one.
no, I don't want to do 1. I don't want to do 2.
Oh, no, what's it, what's that? I can-
Oh, I think so.
It's really hard to visualize this because so many people are gonna get a $5,000
That's not worth
exemption.
it.
And when we're talking 1, 2, or 3, we're talking about a very small
Yeah.
number of
We're
homes
talking
out there.
pennies.
But
Yeah, I know.
what we were talking about earlier, it sounds better to give a 3% than it does a 1%.
Yeah.
Even though most of the people are gonna get $5,000, whether it's 1
Well,
or
that's the
3.
traction I was talking about.
Yeah, it's.
When I said the political capital and the traction on this
Yeah.
whole deal, it's all about the perception. It's got nothing to do with dollars in terms of what each
Well,
individual
he
gets.
showed us the dollars. It's-
No, I'm not, I said as in terms of what each individual gets, it's nominal. The political traction on this is between the number that we put out if you get a 3% homestead exemption. What's it worth? $38. Hoorah.
Now we're at 3 3s and 3 2s. And 1 1.
The mayor's,
Yeah, he's a two.
I know, so say we're at 3 3s.
Yeah, 3 3s.
no, but he hasn't
3,
come
3,
up with
1.
his compromise. He
He
didn't,
said, oh,
is he gonna go up to 3 or is he gonna stay at 2? So I guess you decide.
Where are, you know,
Are you gonna stay?
am I in a tiebreaker mode?
no, you're at, Don is really at that.
Don is the
Don
tiebreaker.
Don's at that 1, and, so we're gonna talk to his manager tomorrow, make sure he gets a 1% increase.
I know, really.
So you're at 2,
I would be
right?
happy with that.
I was gonna say, most people don't get those
So,
increases.
so
when
it
you
goes
get down
up,
here.
because he's at 2, but he'd rather go up.
Yeah.
And so that makes 4 3s. So,
Well, I didn't say I'd go up yet, I was just, yeah, I would go up before I go down, that's what
yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah,
Well, I wouldn't go down.
okay.
So-
So
Down
do
is down.
3.
Well, Don?
Just do 3.
No pressure on you at all,
Round and round and round.
no pressure on you at all, see?
Looks like we're at 3.
Yeah,
Same
do it, do it,
Do what?
do it, do it 3.
Did you say that, Dawn?
Yeah, do it 3.
You heard it tonight. Go, Dawn.
Just make sure.
We got 10 minutes to do the
I'll
calendar.
get more if I get.
What I'm hearing in terms of what I've learned, that council gives directions to staff. The direction that we tonight are giving staff is to take action to implement a resolution for us as council to sign, to move forward with a general homestead exemption for our citizens to be shown on their tax appraisal value for tax year 2019 with a 3% general tax exemption. What I just articulated, exactly what you wanted to do.
Well, it's relative. 3% is the ceiling that we've been given. I would like to give more, but other than that, yes.
Yes.
It's a good start.
Yes,
Okay.
start. Let's
I'm with you.
let's-
That's a
Okay.
good
Let's start at 3.
Here's your direction from council. Please put together whatever documentation is necessary to advise DCAD. And April, get with Richard to figure out how we're gonna educate our citizens in terms of, however.
And a nice press release. would-
Yeah.
And did you hear that, Kristen? In your new house, you get a 3% homestead exemption.
Okay, all right.
Next.
Item number,
You had to do that, didn't you?
Well, it is.
item 2D, city council calendar for establishing special meetings and events.
Oh, you want to should be free.
You put it together.
Okay. I was waiting for you.
I like that. Who knows better than you?
So I think the dates that we're looking for is, let's see, that I need y'all to look at is P and Z wants to have a,
What month do you in?
March 27th and April 3rd.
That's like a month before the new council, and I don't feel right about giving directions to a board a month before a new council comes.
In March.
It's March,
She said April.
It's either March 27th or April 3rd is what we're looking at. So this is part of the zoning ordinance rewrite. And so as we're starting that, we have a kickoff meeting, a community kickoff meeting in February, February 6th. But what Chastity wants to do is to have a joint meeting with the council and the P&Z then in March to start getting some preliminary direction and guidance as we work through that, because that's a 14 to 16 month process. So that's really what this is, and we recognize it's going to, we're not going to get it done in a couple of months. It's going to take a while, but if we delay, then that will just push us out a little farther. So I mean, it's up to y'all. It's your direction, but we really need to be moving on this, and we want the council's input and direction as we start. So I don't know how much, or what the scope of this is, but you have that experience already, so I think it would still be valuable to have that meeting.
Well, are we gonna have meetings with all of the boards?
Well, not all of them. You said PC, DC, DC.
And Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec Board. So we have those scheduled twice a year. The DCEDC you're meeting with this month on January 28th in a joint meeting. In February 11th and 12th, you'll meet with the Parks and Rec Board and the P&Z Board.
On January 20th, we're having a meeting?
28th.
28th. Monday the 28th. That's with the DCEDC.
What's February, I'm sorry?
February 11th and 12th. You have, on February 11th, you have a joint meeting with the Parks Board, and February 12th, a joint meeting with the P&Z.
When are we interviewing the judges?
Next week.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Because I saw that on.
The other two, you interviewed two last meeting, you'll interview two more tomorrow, and then we have the contract is on the agenda
For tomorrow.
for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we're interviewing them before the meeting?
Executive session. So, again, so what Kristen was pointing out then was that we have, after talking with Chastity, she got with the consultant, so we were looking at March 27th or April 3rd for that meeting with the P&Z and to go over some aspects of the zoning ordinance. So if that would work for you, one of those days, not both, just one. We won't make you do it 2 weeks.
It's so difficult because it's out, but I know you have to have a sort of a day, so I've got to do something about my mother's house. But
Well, it seems to be earlier the better. March 27th date would be better, I think, rather than later.
March 27th.
Let's go.
Scratch April 3.
it's church night, I'll be there.
Yeah.
March 27th is when we're doing it.
Yes.
Wednesday, I'll be here.
Yeah, either one of them always.
Yeah, both of those are Wednesdays. Is the next one the March Commission?
Yeah. And then, are y'all okay with, April 25th for a boarding commission banquet?
April what?
25th.
25th?
Oh, man.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Dennis has good, free food. Anytime's a good time.
Yeah.
And then did you want to look at the possible town hall?
Yeah, so we also had been trying to get town halls scheduled in so that we kind of have that calendar, because like this past year, we did have a number of town halls, they were kind of special purpose ones, but we kind of wanted to try to get some on the calendar, so we were looking at every other month, so March 28th, now that would put it the day after your other meeting, but if you, we don't have a specific topic yet, but we would have a topic by then, but we're kind of wanting to look at trying to get those calendar. So we're looking at March 28th for a possible town hall meeting, and then May 30th. Those work.
So, do they normally have their meeting on Wednesdays, the P and Z?
No, this is
No.
a special meeting for them.
So, y'all know I won't be there on this day, Wednesday.
The 27th.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be there.
You said that.
Can we wait till the 28th if she wants to make it?
I don't think the consultant can make it Thursday. They gave us these 2 days. Chastity was looking at either one of those weeks, and then she came back to, and I think she told you those specific dates.
Those
for that
dates
day.
are for sure. If we go back to the consultants, they can see if they can do another date. But it would have to be in between those 2 weeks. So the week of the 25th of March and the first week of April,
So I think they could do the 28th of March.
Possibly.
possibly.
We have to go back and ask.
I'm gonna sound like my friend from District 5, but why is the consultant telling us when we're gonna meet?
Right on.
Well, based on
We
their-
should set the meeting and they should be there.
Well, it's based on,
We're paying
it's
them
based
big
on their
bucks.
availability though too. I mean, they'll have a specific team that's assigned for this project, so it depends on their availability. And if they're working with another client, then they won't be able to be there.
They do have conflicts on the 25th and 28th that may be
I get
able to
real
reschedule.
irritated.
People you're paying.
Yeah,
tell you-
people we're paying big bucks to tell us they can't meet with us on our schedule.
There
And
might
I
be
felt
somebody
that way
paying
when
them
I
bigger
worked.
bucks
So
to
they're
be on their
available on the
schedule though. I
26th?
mean, I don't know, but.
Yeah.
We
Give
can
us
check,
26th.
It better be Dallas.
You said 26th is what?
we can check and see if they're available on the 26th.
It doesn't matter, Kristen, because you'll have to remind us about the codes anyway.
Let's text y'all.
Yes, yes, she texts us, we go, what?
But I do want to say is, like Leslie, I prefer not to have Wednesday meetings, because it is church
Try to
time
apply
Okay.
and stuff,
How about
but
the
also,
I'll check into the
No.
26th.
I'm also gonna say is that, like, we hadn't had town halls in a while, and, I mean, I don't know, I guess coming from my background and stuff, there are certain times to do things, and I would say that you guys just book it, and if we can be there, we'll be there. If we can't, we can't. I mean, the city's gotta run, the city's gotta do their business.
And Kristen's got to tell us to be there.
Yeah,
Yeah, gotta remind us.
Yeah.
So I'll just book y'all and text y'all if they show up. Does that sound good?
Well, well,
All right, well, we'll go with those town hall dates then.
Okay.
So can
And-
you change the P and Z meeting to something other than?
We're gonna try to
November?
move it to the 26th.
Because I'm sure that the church affects not just this council, but affects P and Z as well. So people there. may have
It's
problems.
If we let, well, no, we can't do it April 2nd, but if we look at the next week of April 4th, is that a possibility?
Thursday.
Thursday the 4th? So we could ask them for the 26th or the 4th? 4th is okay.
you're
is
really keeping
Chastity's
it out.
2 days?
One more week.
Oh, it sounds.
Wait till
really-
my next
They're
question.
saying
Chastity's
Chastity's
due
due date or something.
Remember her due date is, which I think is in April.
Oh,
After first of April.
yeah, we were trying to get it right before she goes out on.
Oh, I was gonna say, the consultant has a due date? What else do they have?
Cassidy's pregnant?
Yes.
Didn't she just get married a year ago?
No.
She's been married.
Oh, I was gonna say, I guess he's a keeper.
We'll confirm with Chastity as well then.
In April.
So you decided.
What part of it?
Little city
I
plan.
think the first couple.
She was city plan?
The 26th. I just emailed her telling her the 26th.
I thought she got up there one day and
Did
forgot her
we
new
change the
name.
town hall?
Was that not her? Remember somebody did that
No, we
and
were
said
gonna change that to the.
it was their new name, they'd forgotten.
As old as I am, you
Yeah.
forget your name.
You don't have a new
Well,
name?
You've had it a long time, Dennis.
Mark, you just keep going.
The other thing I was gonna ask is, since we have June and we end here, do you want to look at scheduling of the June workshop dates? This past year, we did 2 evenings, that seemed to work out well, like from 4 to 9. I think we did a Wednesday and a Thursday. Kind of towards the end of the month, like around the 19th and 20th, or the 26th and 27th. I know that's getting way out there.
But that's all right. I tell y'all-
Sure, whatever you
I tell
say.
y'all to book it. and-
Yeah, book it, and if it
Can we
comes
just
close
If we
to
get
the
close.
month, you need to adjust it.
Well, you want to do Thursday, Friday?
Why not?
Not on the Friday.
In June? I just thought it was amusing.
The only option
Could
is Monday and
change
Tuesday.
it.
So Monday and Tuesday, we're going to Thursday and Friday.
Oh, yeah, we want to do Thursday and Friday. Who said that?
What's wrong with Thursday and Friday?
Do you not have a date ever?
So you're gonna do it the 10th and 11th of June?
Okay, you look at that.
Yeah.
What is this?
Budget workshop.
Tuesday, Wednesday,
Monday, Tuesday.
Monday, Tuesday.
Monday,
Monday, Tuesday,
10 and
11th
11.
of June.
Yes.
Have your date on Friday.
Is it gonna be during the day, or is it gonna be in the evening?
No, we were looking at 2 evenings, 4 to 9.
4 to 9?
Can you make it at 4? You can make it at 4 o'clock, can you?
I can hear one.
You won't miss much.
We all-
If you do, it'd be said 10 times later.
Plus, I do think this is being televised.
She knew that.
No budget's on my face.
No,
I've got, okay, June 11th would not be a city council meeting, it's gonna be on the 4th.
Right.
first and third Tuesday.
Wow.
So go ahead and schedule the council retreat for next year.
We'll wait for the second half of the calendar, we'll do that another evening.
Thank y'all for doing the calendar, that's a big help.
Yes,
It helps us
it
know how to
is.
plan.
And then just
And I
remember
speak-
to remind us
Yes.
what we decided on.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you keeping the calendar, you're
I know.
very, very good. Since Dara, you're really good.
That's what I told her. We appreciate someone who bosses us around.
Speaking of Dara, I know several of y'all knew Dara. Do y'all know her husband passed away?
No.
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't know any of the details. It was during the Christmas holidays. I think they're planning a memorial service, and I don't know when it is, but I saw, no, she would send me the information, so I will send that to you.
So they're coming back to Duncanville?
They're gonna have a service here. Do you know when?
Oh, and then, if you didn't know, Greg Contreras is retiring. I put it on your calendar for the 31st. It'll be Thursday from 2 to 5, or 4, 2 to 4. We're gonna have a retirement party for him if y'all like to come. He has a lot of years. What is it, 30?
28?
28.
29, something like that?
Yeah.
What day?
Did he invite
It's
us?
Thursday, the 31st.
It's on your
irrelevant.
calendar.
It's on your calendar already.
Mark would like to know, were we invited?
Has there been some that we haven't been invited to? That's before you.
Thursday the 31st.
Yeah,
I figured you
At
all
two,
knew.
Right, you
from
already
2 to
know
4.
somebody.
Might remember. You probably approved
I
your
don't know
grandma or
what
something.
word.
You are invited, it's on your calendars, and I'm gonna send
No,
you
it's just on there.
Is it in church?
Service.
Yes. And then I will them the invite, because we just got the invite done, so I'll send it to y'all tomorrow, and then I'll text y'all that link too.
That's a big green tree.
Thank you, that's really
Yeah.
nice.
So can you send us like an invite versus just an email? Can you do invites? Is that too
There
hard?
was
Just
a-
send them like the invite, meeting invite? on your
Oh,
calendar?
meeting on a calendar invitation?
I think we had an issue with that when we tried it.
Oh, you did?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, we can't, because you don't have an individual calendar, so it goes to the whole council, and some of them, I think they didn't.
Yeah, we
I don't
tried it
remember what
once,
it
but
was,
really,
yeah.
Well, it seems like,
Do you
I
have-
responded to it and it sent another message out or something.
Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, that's
Try it
what-
again.
Yeah.
Do you keep it on Outlook or do you use it?
I keep it on Outlook.
Okay, we can try it again.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, that's fine, just
Okay. 9:07.